There's gonna be some men who hate me saying this, but I'm just gonna be honest. When he says, I don't like posting stuff on my IG, my ex was crazy. You're tripping, that's just my friend. We all know that's a cop-out for a lot of people. This is the important part that I want women to understand. You'll know he's genuine if...
So today, you're gonna help us decode what men say, because there's a gap sometimes between what they say and what they actually mean.
Okay.
And so I've got a laundry list of things that we're going to go through that women have heard men say repeatedly but don't act in accordance. So you're going to help decipher what these mean.
Okay.
And we're going to start with number one, which is, my ex was crazy.
Woo, okay, you went heavy for the first one. All right. So, my ex was crazy. What it means to him when he says it is literally his perception is that she was crazy. I think that it speaks to the disconnect that a lot of men and women have when it comes to communication and understanding each other and how differently we are wired. And men tend to label that. When you don't understand something, some people will call it crazy, okay? And he genuinely believes that because men have to learn how to respect the woman's intuitive side and how she feels in the moment. And there's a lot of men who push back against that because they think, well, you can't just let her feelings dictate to you what to do, or you can't let that override logic. But they're missing the point of what I'm saying, which is how she feels in that moment can be her reality. And if you're dismissive of it, right, it makes her feel devalued. It makes her feel like you don't love her, as well as it doesn't address whatever is causing her to feel this way. And so now that dismissal or that disconnect causes arguments, right? And it can lead to that perception of this woman is just crazy. Like I always give this example of men and women could be walking down the street and everything seems fine. But to the woman, it's like, I don't feel safe here. I think we need to leave. And the man is like, you're tripping. What's going on? Like everything's cool. No, I don't feel safe. And that can actually lead to an argument. And to him, it's she's crazy because I don't see what she sees. I don't understand what she's processing right now. And sometimes she may be struggling to put it into words and fully explain it. And other times it's also that he's just locked into, it's not lining up with my logic. So whatever you're saying is nonsense. So I do think a lot of men will refer to their ex as crazy because of a lot of misunderstandings that have occurred. And it's also the easier way to dismiss the failure of the relationship without taking any responsibility. Because essentially, if she's just crazy, then I was not the problem. I did nothing wrong. She was just crazy. And it helps it be, it's a kind of a vague label to where we don't have to dive too much deeper into it. Because like, well, she's crazy, why does anything else matter? She's just crazy, you know? But I do think for a woman, the follow-up question should be, what made her so crazy? Why do you perceive her as crazy? What were some of the things that she did? Now, again, there's gonna be some scenarios where she did some crazy things.
Shit.
Exactly. It just is what it is. But I do think that there's a chance at least to discover what might be those misunderstandings that now we don't have to replicate in our current situation.
Boom, freaking love that. All right, we're gonna get to the next one. I got a list. I told you, I got a list. All right, so next one we're gonna do is, I don't like putting relationship stuff on my Instagram.
When he says, I don't like posting stuff on my IG, in a lot of situations, it's, I'm not trying to let other people know that I'm dealing with you or I have a girlfriend or someone I'm dating, and I don't want to tip off the other women that I might want to entertain, all right? That's just the reality. However, there are some guys who literally mean, I don't like putting stuff on my IG. For example, I'm one of those guys. I'm very, and this is the important part that I want women to understand. You'll know he's genuine, or there's a greater chance of him being genuine if he's consistent with this in other areas. Meaning, when you look at me, if you look at my IG, it's pretty much all business. People have always complained, I don't share my life enough. I don't post enough pictures about me. I'm not a picture-taking person. I'm not big on sharing all these different things. The only time you even see me even try is because I'm being hounded to do it, okay? But I don't care to do that. So even in my close friends, I don't post much of anything, okay? So for me, if a woman asks me to post her all over my IG, I'd be like, no, I don't like doing that. I think you'll know they're genuine by seeing, are they consistent with that? Now, if he's posting everything about himself, I've even seen some situations where he's posted women, but then doesn't want to post this woman. Now that's a red flag. That's like, okay, why is it now you're choosing to use this as an excuse not to put stuff on IG? So, you got to dig deeper to figure out what's really going on here.
So what would you ask in those situations? So let's say, for instance, you have seen them every so often, they've posted other people, and you ask, like, would you just say, why don't you post me? Like, how would you even phrase that?
I would ask, what makes you uncomfortable or reluctant to post me on there? Well, like, what's your reasoning behind it, And then kind of going back to something that you mentioned in a different interview was like, when Tom wanted you to play video games with him, he said, it would make me feel very appreciated. I forgot what was the word you used, but essentially he expressed on a deeper level why it was important to him. So I think the woman can do the same thing if she wants to get posts. Like, just as you want him to explain to you why he has an issue with it, express to him why it's important to you and how it makes you feel if he was willing to do it. And I think that would help give some guys the nudge, if they're genuine about their resistance to it, to actually move forward and post you on there.
That's actually, I love that idea. And then, like, what does it mean to you for me to post it? Because, for somebody, it may be like, well, hang on a minute, that's like getting engaged territory, right? Like, if I announce it, then everybody knows, all of my friends know, all of my family knows. And now it's almost showing a possible commitment to that person. Maybe they're not ready, but then someone else may be like, I post everybody. I post everyone that I've ever dated on my Instagram, and it's not a big deal. So do you even think about asking, like, kind of what it may mean to them about what it not posting means?
I think you have to cover all bases, and that would be a great question to ask. But I do think for a lot of men, it's one thing to post a woman that you're dating versus posting your wife. All right? Because whether we like it or not, we know that there's a greater chance that we could be dating this person today and not dating them tomorrow. So now we got to archive posts or delete posts. We got to worry about people who saw that 1 minute you're with this person, now that you're not, the questions that come with that. A lot of people don't want to deal with all that extra stuff that comes with posting somebody unless it is their actual wife. Even though, yes, people get divorced too, but there's a less likely chance of you having to, change things up in a matter of months or a couple of years, So I do think that plays into a lot of men's hesitancy as well. But I do think asking the question of how would it make you feel if I don't, or why is this important to you, should be discussed as well.
And not to test them on, let me see if they're serious about me.
Yeah, again, I think this is another example of, you got to look at the overall picture. If this guy is treating you amazingly well, he doesn't hide you in real life, family, friends know you, all this type of stuff, but he doesn't want to post online, I think we can give him the benefit of the doubt that he just genuinely doesn't care for that stuff. That's not what he wants to do. But if he's not posting you online and you're so focused on that, but you're overlooking the fact that he barely communicates with you, he doesn't treat you well, or he is hiding you in real life too, forget the picture. It's all the other stuff that's the issue. So I do think that we have to, again, take a full view of what's the overall situation going on here to determine if this man's really serious, if he really likes me, what's really going on.
Great freaking answer. All right, next one. I feel like you're in the hot seat right now, by the way. All right, what does it mean if they say, you're the most beautiful girl I've ever seen?
So I think when a man says that, it goes beyond the physical, all right? Because I think most men, they rationalize in the sense that we know there's gonna always be another good-looking woman out there, maybe even a more beautiful woman, right? But when we feel like we can tell you you're the most beautiful I've ever seen, there's something energetically going on, there's something deeper that we're seeing that resonates with us in a way that no other woman does. So even though there may be a physically just as beautiful or more beautiful woman that we've seen before, it's not like how we view you, all right? And it shows we hold you at a greater value to say that, And I honestly don't think, because I know some women might say, well, the guy could be lying. I don't think most men lie with that kind of a statement.
Why is that?
Because you don't have to. It's such an unnecessary thing to lie. I can just call you beautiful. I don't have to say you're the most beautiful I've ever seen. That, to me, I'm not saying no man hasn't ever lied using that line, but I don't think most men will. So I think there's a greater chance he's being genuine, and it's just that to him, because I think there's women who will hear that and they'll start to rationalize, no, well, that's ridiculous, because I'm sure there's other beautiful women, or there's a lot of women who, even though they're good looking, are still very insecure. And so they'll assume that this statement is just to blow smoke, right? And to make them feel good about themselves for some evil purpose. And it's like, no, you genuinely are most beautiful to him because it goes beyond how you physically look.
I love that. And if someone's willing to give you a compliment, like it's very nice to receive it instead of push it back. And I think that may even come from like a defensive mechanism. If you're female, it's like, well, if I accept this, what if like maybe I don't want to say like buying into their,
their game.
Their game, yeah. And it would sadden me that if people dismiss that. I do understand though, it can be a manipulated tactic as a part of their game, but it's like, it's still a compliment. Like if you can take the compliment, then take it. And I love your idea of it being not just the physicality, it's the energy, it's the personality. That's super powerful. And then the last thing I'll say is that my husband, so the goal is to be together forever until the day we die.
Yeah.
So when I got married at 22 years old,
awesome.
So very young. So the thing is that I'm going to change. I'm going to get older. And in my aging, let's say when I'm 80, if my husband says that I'm beautiful, I want to take that as truth. I don't want to dismiss it and now say, well, because I'm 80, maybe I'm not. Like, how do we allow the truth of what somebody is saying to actually carry the weight that they mean it to carry?
A reluctance to accept compliments sometimes is a fear of being vulnerable. All right? Because it's almost like, and let's just use a woman, I don't want to believe this is true because I'll fall even deeper into the emotional investment and belief that this is going to be something amazing and special. And in the back of my head, I already don't trust men to uphold that standard forever. And he's going to disappoint me. So rather than fall too deep and get hurt, let me manage this by kind of rejecting this or distancing myself a little bit so I don't get too emotionally consumed, right? So I think that we have to be willing to not live in that fear of, well, if I accept this and enjoy this and let it get to my head and I'm going to be disappointed by it later. And understand that, because I feel the need to say this, and this is kind of a side note, but it attaches to this. Because you have some women who'll say, well, he's going to say I'm the most beautiful today, but then be looking at some other woman tomorrow. But that doesn't mean he thinks they're more beautiful than you. That doesn't mean that it voids what he said to you. He still meant you're the most beautiful. But yes, there are other beautiful women. And yes, as a man can love you dearly, feel like you are the one. It doesn't mean, you've mentioned it before, that he won't find someone else attractive. But finding them attractive doesn't mean I want to leave them for you. It doesn't mean I'm going to put them above you. It doesn't mean that they hold any more value to me than you do. And I think that sometimes women, they take those moments of him finding someone else attracted or even making a comment about another woman as like this hit against them, or meaning that undermines how he claims he feels about me. And it's like, it does not. It's completely separate things. So I think once a woman understands that, it makes it easier for her to embrace what he's saying. I also think that as people, but of course we're talking to women right now, if you don't fully accept the compliment and the love he's trying to pour into you, you risk sabotaging something super special and amazing. All right? Yes, if you accept it, there is a quote unquote risk of getting hurt later, but it's almost like it's better to love than have lost than to never have loved before. You can't experience the fullness of this without fully diving in. So dive in, but learn how to still be aware enough and strong enough that if it does take a left turn later, you'll be able to pull yourself out and you will survive. You will be okay. But you don't do yourself any favors by pushing that away. And this brings me to another point I feel the need to mention. A lot of women don't realize how in them resisting the compliments, the love, all these things, they're hurting the man. Because he starts to feel like, well, maybe she doesn't feel that way about me. Maybe she's resistant to the things I say because there's some kind of disconnect here that I can't do nothing about. And so it's almost like, if you won't let me love you, then how can I trust that you love me? And now how do I feel safe in here? And how do I feel comfortable continuing to open up to you and express my desires to you when you seem like you just brush it off or that they don't hold any value to you? Because one of the things with men is that we are creatures of, if it works, we'll keep doing it, right? But if it doesn't work, we're gonna stop. So if he's giving you compliments, if he's telling you I love you, you're so beautiful, and you're just like, yeah, whatever, you're silly or whatever, that you're not being for real. At some point he stops. Because she's like, okay, she doesn't care for it. She doesn't accept it. Why am I going to keep saying it? But if I say it and I see the smile it puts on your face, I see the better mood you're now in. And I also see how now everyone benefits because that better mood, that positive energy, it pours back over into me. It pours over into the kids, all these things. Now there's a greater motivation to keep that going. So a lot of people don't realize, a lot of women, they're shooting themselves in the foot by being resistant to compliments like that and just compliments and signs of affection or attempts to love them in general.
Wow, I didn't expect that as a beautiful answer, but you're so right. No, because I'm always, look, my show is definitely here to support women, but my favorite human on earth is my husband, who's a man. And so I'm always trying to think about, yes, there are guys out there that are going to use manipulative tactics in order to try and, trap you, if you will. But there are also some genuine people that really mean it. And if it's very genuine, what's that negative knock-on effect that you can have? And so I love that you positioned it like that. And then as a woman, though, I do think partly it's, if you seek the validation from those external praises, what happens if they leave you? Now, how do you feel? Where do you get your validation from? So it's easier to push it away than to accept it and then not have it. You said that earlier.
Yeah, and I think the key is, I don't want the women to seek it from him. I just want them to receive it and accept it. All right. So you don't have to go looking for him to say it. And if he did stop saying it, doesn't mean that now look at yourself as if you're unattractive or something's wrong with you. But, when he is giving that to you, take it, receive it, appreciate it, honor it, pour it back, but don't just reject it or try to avoid it or dismiss it, because that, again, I think we get so caught up in trying to avoid the bad person, we end up taking it out on the good person. All right. And so there's a lot of relationships where there's a struggle to bond on a deeper level because you're still holding on to the fear of, well, what if he does X, Y, Z later? What if he hurts me? And it's like, no, you got to dive in and you got to open your heart up completely. And that will only strengthen or expose that he is the manipulator. Because again, the manipulator is only trying to do whatever they can to get what they want. All right. So you have to also, I feel the need to mention this. So, because one of the big things women are fearing being manipulated for is sex. Let's just be real about that. So the key isn't, well, don't receive the compliments and whatever you might think is game. The key is just don't have sex until you feel comfortable having sex. You see what I'm saying? Like you're knocking one thing that could actually hinder the possibility that this could be a genuine situation because you're fearful of an outcome that you can still control separately. So it's like, just don't do the things that you feel like you'd be cheated or you feel used for if it happens and this doesn't go anywhere. And I would argue that the man who's genuine is going to be more patient and respect that. The manipulator is going to be impatient and try to talk you out of that, if anything, all right? And again, it's always about, look at the overall picture. If he's telling you you're the most beautiful woman in the world, but if he treats you like, mistreats you in general, then that's a reason to, it's not even about whether you believe he thinks you're beautiful or not. He's not treating you right. Stop entertaining this man. Plain and simple. But if he's doing what he's supposed to do and he's complimenting you, why are we assuming it's something bad? It goes back to when I mentioned how I talk to men about being more receptive to a woman's intuition and her feelings. And some men will say, well, what if she tries to use that against you? And my argument is, if she's been a good woman to you, why would you assume such a negative thing? Now, it doesn't mean that's not possible that could happen, but why not give the good person the benefit of the doubt? We get so caught up in that moment or that thing on the surface that we forget the overall picture, good or bad. And we have to stop making that mistake.
Yeah, God, so true. I was seeking the validation and I basically asked my husband at one point, I had tried this on this new shirt. and we were going out for dinner. And so we're walking out the door, we get to the restaurant. He doesn't say anything about my new shirt. And I'm like, I can't believe he didn't say that's the best shirt I've ever seen on you, and he doesn't say anything. And so eventually I was like, okay, you have a relationship built on trust, built on honesty, just ask him. So I was like, babe, what do you think of my new shirt? And he looks and he goes, eh. And I was horrified. I was like, I got like a little upset. And he goes, why did you get upset? And I was like, because, I thought like we haven't had date night for a long time. I buy this new shirt. I'm trying to impress you. And he's like, but I'm always going to be honest with you. He goes, I think you're beautiful, but the shirt isn't so much, And so he was like, and going back to when you're 80, babe, I need you to know and trust that when I say you look beautiful, I actually mean it. I'm not just saying it to stroke your ego in this moment while we're on date night because I want to make you happy.
Yes.
He's like, if I say it, it's true. So if I say it now, then you know it's true. If I don't say it, then you know it's true. So I was like, that was quite a romantic way of telling me that my top sucked.
But it's an important thing because I think women do have to recognize that if you want honesty from this man always, you have to respect the bad honest and the good honest, because then you can trust it's always honest. You see, if he has to walk on eggshells and can't tell you when he doesn't like something, then you'll never know when he really does or doesn't. But when y'all can establish that foundation of he can be brutally honest, and of course, again, it's not what you say, but how you say it, but he can be honest without fear, you create an environment where you can always trust pretty much what this man is saying. And that's important.
Yeah. So true. Okay, next one. She's just a friend. What up, homie? I got something free and new to share with you right now. How often are you visited by that negative voice in your head telling you that you're not smart enough, that you're not good enough, experienced enough, not fill in the blank? One of the most powerful things you can learn to do in life is to turn that negative voice into your bestie. And I want to teach you how to do that and so much more in my 4 steps to becoming confident workshop. And guys, the most amazing thing is you can actually register for completely free for this workshop. So click the link on your screen and I'll see you on the inside.
Oof. So, and sometimes it's easier just to use myself, right? So to start with myself, I have a lot of female friends that are genuinely just friends. And so if a woman came into my life and asked about these women, I would say she's just a friend, right? But I think that for a woman who's trying to understand it, because that's really what it boils down to, trying to decipher, is this really a genuine friendship or not? I think one area to look at is what is the level of engagement these two people have, okay? So for me, I'm a firm believer that genuine platonic friendships don't need to be engaging 24/7. All right, especially when we're talking about men and women, because we're just friends. Like, we don't need to be talking every single day. We don't have that high level of engagement. But when we talk, we're like brother, sister. We got nothing but love for each other. That to me speaks to a more genuine friendship. When there is that constant interaction, I'm not going to lie to you, I do believe that typically at least one or more person involved has developed feelings, which is normal. When you're dealing with someone consistently like that, every day, one that shows you love their personality, you love their character, their spirit, or whatever. So all it takes is for someone to also find the other attractive. All right. Now, if two people generally don't find each other attractive, then it's possible to just be platonic friends. But for there to be a level of attraction and I love you as a person, someone's going to catch feelings. Plain and simple. And yes, just as there are men who play the role of friend, hoping that one day they may have an opening to jump into boyfriend or husband role, there are some women doing the same thing, playing the background. I also think that, again, you got to go deeper because he may genuinely feel that this is just my friend. But you as a woman, you're sensing something from her that's telling you, wait a minute, but no. And you've got to be clear about that because sometimes we attack the person who's actually the innocent person involved and we're frustrated because they don't see what we see. So in that scenario, the man genuinely is processing things as this is just my friend. And what I've learned is whether it's a man or a woman, when we don't have any interest in them, we don't want to entertain the other idea of something more here or they could want us for something more. Because we understand that facing that reality could mean ending the friendship. So we will stay in that denial and say, no, it's just my friend. But we generally want to believe that, or we generally do believe that. Now, the partner, the woman coming in, hearing this and seeing something different, you have to be mindful of not just putting your frustration on that man, but saying, listen, I hear you. I respect that you're saying this is just your friend, but that's not what I see from her. All right. Now, you'll have some scenarios where the man will still be dismissive and still say, well, no, you're crazy. You're tripping. That's just my friend. At this point, I think what a woman has to understand is whether he's being honest or not, if you're seeing things that are making you uncomfortable and he's unwilling to address and resolve them, do not move further with this man. There's no point. It's not about who's right or wrong, because at the end of the day, even if he's honest, but the behavior continues, you will never have peace in this situation. You will always be looking over your shoulder. And even if today he's correct, meaning today neither has a desire for the other more than friendship, things can change in those dynamics sometimes. All right. And people can just there's been tons of situations where after years of friendship, someone realized, oh my gosh, I'm in love with my friend. All right. And so you won't be able to operate the way that you need to in this situation, and you're not going to be happy. So it doesn't make any sense for you just to suck it up because, well, they're saying it's just friendship and I don't want to seem insecure. Let me just go along with this. No, he should be willing to at least establish boundaries, which goes back to my point of the level of engagement tells me a lot about what may potentially be going on here. And I do think that if it's truly platonic, both sides, anyone who's being addressed about their friend should be willing to establish boundaries. Like I even said, I remember, because again, I have lots of female friends. And when I was younger, and this is when I was younger before I was Stephan Speaks, I always had this principle. I would tell them, I said, listen, I'm single right now. You can call me 1 a.m., 2 a.m., I don't care. If I get a girlfriend, don't think you can call me at this time of night. Like, I don't need the woman telling me that. I'm telling you that. Because I'm trying to eliminate any drama and nonsense. And I know how that can be perceived. So I would establish boundaries. So of course, if a woman came into my life and said, hey, I don't like the level of interaction y'all have, can you at least adjust that? I'd be like, sure. And if you're really my friend, you should respect that. Because you should want me to have a healthy, loving relationship. Now, granted, there are some scenarios that cross the line, so to speak, as far as what this new person may be requesting, because they may be deeper insecurities. They may have been burned by a friend situation before. So it gets tricky where we have to discuss and really be honest with ourselves about, are they asking too much, or is this a reasonable request? But I do think that when a man is serious about you, he'll at least be willing to make some adjustments if it's a genuinely platonic situation.
God, that's so good. That's so good. So I have a feeling I know what you're going to say. But what if they've slept together and the guy's just like, no, we were just both really drunk. It was this one time in Ibiza.
I just think that if you slept with a friend and your new partner is not comfortable with that, you've got to respect that. Because again, here's the problem with that. It establishes two things. One, that there is attraction. And if you guys are still friends, you still love each other as people or enjoy each other as people. That's a recipe for messiness. What is to now stop if I'm having a vulnerable moment one day because I'm arguing with my girl, right? What is to stop the chances of me and my friend crossing that line? Of course, we could say, oh, well, they respect your relationship. Of course, but we're human beings. We're playing with fire. I'm not saying it's a guaranteed it'll happen. I'm not saying there aren't plenty of friends who slept together, still friends, and their new partner, everything worked out, right? But again, I also believe it goes back to level of engagement. If I slept with this friend, I'm cool with them, but I literally only speak to them every several months, only see them once in a while. That's very different than they are in my life every single day. All right. And we're constantly interacting. I think it's unreasonable for me to think that someone should be completely comfortable with that. So if someone came to me and said, well, what should I do? I'll be like, listen, you need to tell your friend they got to fall back. Like I'm a believer that your partner should be your number one friend. All right. I'm not saying your only friend. Okay. I'm not saying you got to put all your eggs in that one friend basket, but they should be your best friend. And if they are, then why do you need this level of engagement with someone else who has the potential to cause problems in your relationship? Some people may view it as unfair, but life ain't always fair, all right? It's like, hey, we got to look at how do we create the healthiest environment for our relationships? Are we prioritizing our lover or our friend? And if we are prioritizing our friend, then again, the question is, are you hiding from the deeper feelings that you do have for your friend? Because I've seen some situations, let's flip it for a second. I've seen situations where women had male best friends that they were like, this man goes nowhere. He comes with the package. You want me, you're taking him with it. That, again, I'm not gonna say it automatically means there's something deeper, but it's a cause for concern, you know? And it's like, why are you so attached to the hip to this guy that no matter who comes in your life, they have, and again, they have to deal with him at the level of interaction that is deemed controversial or problematic, we'll say.
Okay. So I've got perfect example then. When I met Tom, I had a male friend that I'd been friends with for like about, I think maybe 5 or 6 years. And I was with another guy. So I was dating a guy and he was very jealous of my friend. And so because he was very jealous, I stopped seeing him, I stopped calling him. And once I realized, oh, my boyfriend's very toxic. He's very jealous. He's manipulative. I've got to let him go. I realized I can't believe that I was sacrificing my friendship with this guy because he was jealous, even because nothing was going on with my male friend. And so I remember declaring, when I meet the next boyfriend or anybody, I'm going to say, my friend comes with me. Like, he's a male friend. He's one of my best friends. I will sit on his lap. I even said that to Tom. So when I introduced him to Tom, first thing I said, I had the photo of him in my wall. Now look, I was in America here for a few months, so I had photos of all my family and all my friends. And I made it a point, Stephan, to be like, that's my friend. He's male. He's one of my closest friends. Yes, I sit on his lap sometimes. It means nothing. I've never slept with him. Like, I just had like this laundry list of things. And it was, I don't want to say it was a test, but it was a way of me seeing how secure Tom was. And he didn't bat an eye. He was like, oh, cool. Now, look, I don't think I've sat on his lap since I've been dating Tom. Yeah, I can see you holding your breath. But it was one of these, like, as a friend, because I'm little, so I'll like come and sit on his lap and I'll give him a cuddle. But still, Tom didn't bat an eye. He goes, oh, of course, he's your friend. Now, look, once Tom met him, if he was a guy that was in any way threatening or flirting with me, I think Tom obviously would have spoken up.
Yeah.
But to your point is that he did the inventory, if you will, of our interactions, the history, our connection, and you could just tell we were just like brother and sister versus any potential sparks between us. But that is why, if you're wondering why someone says this person comes with me, and so either you like it or not, it was because I had so lost myself, left all of my friends because of my ex-toxic boyfriend.
One thing I always tell people is that when they have an issue with your friend, a lot of times it's because they see something in you that you're not being completely forthcoming about.
Oh, what do you mean?
So meaning, let's go back to the guy before Tom, right? Even though you were with him, and if he was toxic, chances are you were more emotionally connected with your friend than him, okay? You may have even opened up to your friend in ways you don't open up to him. He's sensing a closeness that y'all have that you don't have with him. So regardless of you saying, well, this doesn't mean anything, it's just platonic, that creates a level of insecurity. And again, he may already have his own toxic, insecure issues, but that only compounds it, all right? So it's the same thing. It's like a woman can be dating a man, he has this female best friend, she notices that when she comes around, he's super helpful to her, he's super accommodating, a little bit more than he is with her. And so now, no matter how much you say this is just a platonic friendship, it's going to be very difficult for her to feel comfortable in that relationship. Initially, a lot of people will accept it initially. What allowed Tom to continue is, as you said, he did the inventory, he saw it, but what you and him had was actually stronger or strengthening to where he doesn't have to worry about that, I also think that, let's face it, whether people want to admit it or not, how we view the friend either in comparison to us or in looks in general plays a role. Because let's face it, if a woman is dating a man and she meets the friend and the friend is not the greatest looking girl, she might think, I ain't got nothing to worry about.
I hate to say it, but you're so right.
Like,
oh my God.
whatever. That's just his friend, right? But if she comes and it's like some supermodel looking woman with this amazing body who has men falling at her feet, it's gonna be a lot harder for her to be accepting that this is just his friend. So there's so many different layers to it. And I think people just have to be honest, one, about, how it makes them feel. I'll say this. Here's another example. This actually happened in a marriage. So a guy reached out to me and he was going through problems with his wife. And he said that he felt like she always had this male friend that he had accepted, but now he feels like he has an issue with and feels like she's giving him more love and attention than him, right? And I said, okay, well, listen, it's very hard to attack someone on the idea that, oh, you must be messing with your friend, or oh, you want to be with your friend. So I said, step one is let's strengthen your relationship. Let's focus on what is lacking between you two, all right? Because if there is nothing going on, then fixing those things will automatically shift the balance of energy going on here. But if you do all the things you need to do and she's still giving more attention and love to this friend, we got a huge problem, all right? He messaged me like 4 months later. He said, man, everything worked out beautifully. He just focused on, all right, I'm gonna improve my communication with her, spend more time with her, just focus on let's make our relationship better. Because he went from basically complaining about the friend constantly to agreeing to not say anything about the friend for the next few months while he focuses on being better. And he said it changed everything. She was no longer, she's still friends with the guy, but it clearly it wasn't a problem anymore and it wasn't having any negative impact and they were doing much better. So I do think people have to first address what is the disconnect you and your partner have, right? And then from there, if that's still not fixing things, then you may have a bigger problem on your hands.
Oh, God, that's so powerful. And what a lovely story.
Yeah.
Oh, I love that so much.
Yeah.
And that's so astute of you to say, because now I was thinking, as you were talking, I was like, oh, yeah, my ex was definitely intimidated by my male friend because he was more successful, he was driven, and my ex wasn't driven or successful at all. And so
there you go.
But I didn't care, right? That wasn't something that I cared about, but
yeah, exactly. Because again, it's more so what we know typically it gets the favor of the opposite sex. So essentially, the woman sees the female friend who's super beautiful, and even if the man says, I don't care, it's harder to accept that because men are visual, beautiful woman, it's easy to fall into temptation. Well, on the flip side, if your friend is this successful millionaire or whatever, and I'm broke, it's gonna be a little bit harder because we know that plays a huge role in men being able to get a woman, And if I can't provide, well, then what happens if he's willing to step in? So it can be a problem, but that also speaks to the deeper insecurities within that individual and them needing to be confident. So I do think there is a level of, is that person confident enough to stand while your friend or whoever is in your life? But we also have to be mindful of, again, how we interact with them and what kind of energy we show them versus what we're showing our partner.
Oh, so good. Okay, on to the next one.
All right.
How many men have you slept with? What is he actually, why is he asking?
I hate that question. So, all right, there's gonna be some men who hate me saying this, but I'm just gonna be honest. There's a lot of men who are concerned about a woman's past because they don't want to be in competition with anyone you've been with before. And they feel more safe and secure if you have a very low count.
And when you say in competition, you mean like penis size?
Penis size, comparison in performance, all these different things. Now, there's also statistics that say women who have a higher body count have a higher rate of divorce. Or they also, as some people say, they have a more difficult time pair bonding with men. All right, I forgot the whole science behind it, but I believe it's true, but it's true while missing context, in my opinion, all right? My opinion is not that the body count is what creates the disconnect or the struggle to connect and bond with a man. I believe it's the underlying issue that may have led to the high body count in the first place. Meaning, I had a client once, her father always told her she was ugly growing up and that she was only good for laying on her back, okay? Which led to her being extremely promiscuous. So now, her struggle to bond with a man on a deeper level wasn't because she was promiscuous, it's because she was holding on to trauma from her father and did not view herself as a woman who had any value past being promiscuous, okay? So to me, if she heals from the issue, she will be able to bond with a man very easily. Whatever that issue is that they think exists, I think is fixed through healing the trauma. So to even go deeper, you could have a woman who's, let's say her number is 50 guys. Then you have another woman with 2 guys. But the woman with 2 guys has gone through childhood trauma and has been burnt by these 2 relationships badly, has not healed. This woman that been with 50 guys faced her trauma, resolved it, healed. I would argue the 50 guy woman has a better chance of truly embracing love and bonding with a man than the woman who had 2 guys but still holding on to the trauma. So to me, it's not the numbers, but to go back to your question, men are being told it's the number that matters, all right? So that creates this dynamic where more men are asking that question because yes, they wanna see what kind of past you have, what's the likelihood of you being able to stick around and actually commit and bond with them and things of that nature. I don't think I don't like the question, right?
I can tell.
But there are men asking it, and women do have to understand that it does play a role in some men's willingness to decide to commit to you or not.
And in those situations, then just be completely transparent and honest?
Yes. My thing is this. I can never tell someone to lie when they're being asked a question. The most I can tell you is you don't have to announce certain things. You don't have to come out and say, hey, I've been with 50 guys, right? But if you're asked the question, be honest. Because here's the problem. If he is not a man who can handle the idea that you have that kind of a past, God forbid you lie initially and it comes out later, it's gonna be 100 times worse, all right? You would have been better off never starting this relationship. So to me, I'd rather you be honest and forthcoming. And if this man can accept it, we no longer have to worry about that being an issue. Or at least there's a much less likely chance of that being an issue. Because I'll admit, for some people, it'll become an issue once things go wrong. Meaning, let's say again, using the 50-man woman, she's been with 50 guys. He says, okay, I'm cool with that, I'm fine. They get in a relationship, they get serious. Let's say something happens where they're starting to have a disconnect and things are going wrong. And what tends to happen is if he ever told a friend or anyone about it, they might say something like, well, what do you expect? She's been with 50 guys before, you see? Mm-hmm. And so now it starts to be used against the woman, or now he starts to wonder, well, damn, did I make a bad decision because she is a woman that has a past, you see? So it can sometimes happen like that, but I think there's a less likely chance of that happening if he genuinely knows and accepts it from the beginning. So, and I would argue that the man who's not gonna have an issue or doesn't care to hold that against you is probably never even gonna ask the question, all right? But if he asks the question, he's probably a guy that is, whether it be genuinely or whatever, he's concerned and this is gonna be a factor in his decision making. I'd rather you just be real with him than to, again, face the things going left later and it being way worse.
Do you think that relationships will work if you never discuss it?
Yeah, I think it can work without ever discussing the actual number.
This so surprises me. I had a whole conversation with a bunch of extremely powerful women, and we were going around the table, and they're like, yeah, I've never asked my husband. I'm like, what?
Yeah.
Like, how do you not have that discussion? And they're like, yeah, like, I almost don't want to know. And I'm like, oh, that was like me and Tom, like, that was like the first thing we first thing we asked each other. But it didn't dawn on me that would ever be something that you would never discuss in a relationship.
I think it's more likely to be a discussion when we're really young. But as we get older, we already know there's a better chance this number is not gonna be what we like to hear anyway, mm-hmm. So why even ask? We're adults, we're pretty sure we've both gone down this path many a few or a lot more than a few times. And I think, yeah, I think it definitely can, you don't have to know the number. Plenty of people are together and they don't know the actual exact number. They may have an idea of you had a past. And for me, that's all I think I would want to know that part. I don't need the exact number. I would want to know, but were you wild in your past? Simply because I want to understand you as a person. I want to understand your evolution, how you got here. I don't plan on using that against you. It's not a problem for me. I don't have an issue with women having a past. Because to me, it's about who are you today? And again, are we in alignment? Do we share the same values? Can we make each other happy? That's what matters the most, okay? But I do think the more I can know about you, the better I can understand you. You know, so that's why I would want to know that aspect of it. But the actual number, I know I would never ask.
Wow, really?
Yeah, I would never ask.
So for the guys that do, or the women that do, why is it that men are more willing to like, oh, cool, that's a great number. I'm never going to marry you, but I'll sleep with you and date you. Like, what is happening there?
So one, we have to understand there's a difference between who a man will sleep with and who a man will marry, all right? And the criteria to be slept with is way less than the criteria to be married. So for a lot of men, yeah, again, he views it that there's a lot of different concerns. There is the concern of her ability to bond deeply after being with so many different people. There is the concern of comparison, all right? There is the concern of perception, all right? Do people know your history? Because I always say, if you have a past, but people don't know about it, even if a man finds out, there's a lot of men who will overlook it. It goes back to when we talked about people throw the rules out for the ones that they really like, right? So there's a lot of men who will say, I would never be with a woman with a past. And literally they are with a woman that they know has a past. But they like them enough, and the key was no one really knows. But when you are known to have a past, right? This makes it 10 times more difficult for a man to be with you, because now he not only has to battle his own feelings about things, he has to deal with other people's perceptions and opinions about it. And that becomes so much more difficult also because, let's face it, you don't want your homeboys saying, yeah, I done been with her, or I know this one that done been with her, and all these different things. It just really plays on a man and weighs heavily on him, and most won't cross that path. But again, that won't stop them from sleeping with you. So it's just one of those things, and that's why I don't want women to take this the wrong way, especially younger women, right? But I will say this: if you insist on being out there and doing your thing, protect your reputation. Be very mindful of how you put yourself out there. I just think that's a smart, again, I'm not saying you should be out there. I'm not saying do all these wild things, but if you're going to do it, be wise about how you move, because those things will come back to haunt you in relationships, and you want to be careful. And that's why, I mean, you have some people that, God forbid, if they would have stayed in their hometown that they went college, they may not escape their reputation. They had to go somewhere else to make it work, okay? And the guy doesn't know anything about their history. But there's a lot of situations like that, you know? And it's very tough for men to deal with.
Yeah, it reminds me, you were telling, in an interview, I heard you say a story about how one guy had 6 girlfriends. And
then girlfriend number 7.
Yeah,
yes.
If you don't mind.
And so basically he had his 6 girlfriends, one for every day of the week.
And they all knew about each other.
They all knew about each other. But the one, day 7 girl, she was the one. And with her, he didn't have sex. So he had sex with all the 6, but not her. He kept her away from all the other ones because he did not want to risk them interfering with her perception of him and his chances of being able to be with her. And I didn't hear about this through the guy. I heard about this through one of the day 6 girls, all right? Because she was trying to become number 1. And I was explaining to her, because she was like, well, what can I do sexually? This was her actual question, to make him pick me, because I'm the best looking and I'm the youngest one of the group. And I was like, listen, he doesn't respect you in that way. He'll sleep with you, you know, but he's not viewing you as someone that he wants to be with. And then that's when she revealed to me all the other parts of the dynamic they have in place. And I was like, there you go. Like, it finally snapped for her once I said that. And she saw, wait a minute, yeah, he does have this one woman. He doesn't even have sex with her, but he treats her like she's the queen of the whole crew. So, you know, again, men put women in a different box, and there's the sleep with you box, and then there's the potential wife box. Now, I always say it's very easy to go from potential wife to another woman I'll sleep with, but very difficult to go from a woman I'll sleep with to a potential wife.
It is very frustrating as a woman for that. That's true, by the way.
Yeah, I can understand.
We won't go down the whole rabbit hole of double standards. Like, that's for a different. Next time you're here, we'll talk about that. But again, like, just you laying out like this, whether we like it or not, this is just exactly how men think. I just really appreciate it, because then it allows us to know how we want to maneuver.
Exactly.
And if we don't care, then amazing. Like, I'm such an advocate of support women on their decisions. So.
Yes.
But knowing at least how they think gives me the power to then take my actions and think about them. Even if I don't like the results may still occur.
Absolutely.
All right, next one. I don't want to ruin our friendship.
One, that sounds like he friend zoned her, okay? And I hate saying this because I know it's going to hurt some feelings, but again, it has to be said. One of the number one, if not number one reason why a man friend zones a woman is lack of attraction. Plain and simple. He may love her character, love her as a person, holds her in great regard, but he is not sexually attracted to her in order to want to cross that line, all right? Because if he was sexually attracted to her and he already has you as his friend that he values, chances are he's gonna try to be with you. Chances are. I won't say there aren't some small situations where he may be afraid to cross that line. So a big reason why women don't cross that line, or they're afraid to, is because the mentality is, I don't want to end up losing my friend and my lover. Because again, for a lot of women, they view relationships as almost like this inevitable disaster waiting to happen, all right? And I'm just trying to delay the disaster as long as possible. And so some men have been traumatized to the point where they may have that same perception, and they may feel like keeping her as my friend is safe. But I think more so when they view it that way, it's because they feel like they're not ready to fully honor the relationship. So basically, okay, I have this friend, love her to death, and let's say I am attracted to her, but I'm not done being a hoe. I'm not done running these streets. And because I respect and value her so much, the last thing I want to do is cross this line with her when I know I cannot honor her in being committed and being monogamous to her. So that is one reason why he might say, I don't want to ruin the friendship. But I do think a bigger reason is because it's simply a matter of there's no attraction there. I've had stories, and again, women won't like it, but you got to hear it. I had one client who said to me, because I mentioned that to her, how a lot of guys, when they friend zone a woman, it's because of attraction. And she said, you know what's crazy? I have this guy I've been friends with for years. We love each other. And one day he said to me, if you would just lose 30 pounds, you would be perfect. Okay? And of course, she was hurt by that and she was offended by it. But it speaks to the reality of that's the disconnect. And we don't like hearing it once there's an actual love and bond between two people. But let's face it, the reason why people don't entertain someone is typically lack of attraction. The number one reason, when you ask someone, why aren't you with your friend? What is the number one thing they say? I'm not attracted to them like that. That's it. And so we then become so attached to our perception of self. And I say that to say this. This is kind of going left, but I feel like it needs to be said. So for that woman being told, if you would just lose 30 pounds, right? Rather than viewing that as, well, dang, if I just address this issue or this thing that I have going on, this extra weight, I could have this relationship that I want. It was, oh, he doesn't love me for me. But in like, no, he loves you for you. But being in a romantic relationship with you requires attraction. And so some people don't like this comparison, but it's almost like if you had a male friend, love them to death, and let's say you are attracted to them, but they are super broke. And not only are they super broke, they're still in their lazy phase. Hopefully it's just a phase, but they're still lazy and not doing anything about it. No matter how much you love him, you don't want to be in a relationship with him. And some may still give it a try, but it would not be wise to do so. But that would be a deterring factor from being with him because he doesn't have his stuff together, or at least he doesn't have the foundation of working towards getting his stuff together. Does it mean you don't value him or love him? No, but we have to understand there are other things that are required to have a romantic relationship with each other. And rather than take it as like an attack on us, or because even with him, you saying, well, I don't want to be with, if you would just get a job, I could be with you. Should he be so offended and hurt by that now he just, runs away from what you're saying? No, it's a reality. If you are willing to work on that issue, we can make this work. But and again, it doesn't mean every woman who has told something about her weight should go out and go lose weight. It's just to simply say that sometimes those things that we overlook are barriers to us being able to have something more with someone, because those things do affect the level of attraction we have physically to each other.
Oh, that's so hard to talk about. And yet I agree, like, especially when it comes to attraction, you can't help what you're attracted to, who you're attracted to. And, my heart bleeds for that woman because who knows where that weight came from and why she's holding on to it. And there's so much deep, trauma that could even be, and I'm not saying that everybody that's overweight has trauma, right?
Yeah.
But there's so much complexity to it that my heart really does go out for her. But I don't want to ignore exactly what you're saying about the attraction piece. And what was interesting is you said that, I was like, oh, someone will happily, like, if you're attracted to them, people will more likely give that a shot and see, like, maybe I can get over this part of their character. Maybe I can ignore this part of them. Like, you can make those exceptions, but you don't almost do it when it's the other way around.
Yes. And it's tough. It's tough, but it's the reality. And the reality is that it's done on both sides in different ways. We just tend to internalize or take issue when it applies to us. Because listen, there are women right now who have a great male friend who they love to death, but you know what the problem is? He's way too short. He's much shorter than her, and she just that doesn't do it. She can't wrap her arms around that, so to speak, And so it doesn't make her a bad person. It's just the reality. Now, in his case, he can't change that. He's stuck. All right? On the flip side, when it's a weight thing, that is changeable. But again, it's a very sensitive topic for a lot of people. And I do think that people just have to make sure they ask themselves, why am I resistant to even that issue as far as addressing it? Because, I'll give you an example. This is a marriage one, though. I had a couple where they got married. During the marriage, she gained 100 and let's say 100 pounds, okay? So she gained 100 pounds, completely changed how she looked. And of course, intimacy started dropping off, respect started dropping off. The whole thing fell apart. They get a divorce. And she knows one of the biggest issues he has with her is the extra weight. In being separated, she now finds her motivation, okay? She's like, I'm gonna show him what he's missing, okay? She loses the whole 100 pounds. Gets back in amazing shape. What happens? They start getting close again. They start sleeping with each other. Now they're fully back together. You know what she does? Gains the 100 back. Wow. Then they end up divorcing, and that was the end of it. Because at that point, I think, in that example, people have to also understand it's not simply about the weight. It's about how much do you really care about me that when you felt like you wanted to do this, you did this. But now that it's important to me, we're back together, you act like you don't care. So it dismisses me. It dismisses how I feel. It dismisses how it impacts me. And it's the same thing that happens on the flip side with men, how, like, again, because men let themselves go too. I think people always complain about how we talk more about women gaining weight and changing in marriage, but not men, and how men are not looking the same either. But the reality is that the reason why it's talked about less is because women make less of an issue of it verbally, right? But it's still impacting the relationship. So a woman is less likely to say, I have a problem with this, things of that nature, but she's still less intimate with him. She's still less attracted to him. It's still negatively impacting the relationship. And that's why I say to either side, man or woman, you don't get a gold medal because you stayed with your partner, but yet you treat them worse when you don't like that they're physically changing or whatever the case may be. Like, the goal should be, I need to show up 100% the way I always did. If that is being done despite the changes, then great. Then no one needs to change anything. But if there's gonna be a problem, we need to be forthcoming and honest with each other about it. And we need to be willing to be on the receiving end of that constructive criticism and make adjustments to, again, re-strengthen our relationship. But for going back to, I don't want to ruin the friendship statement by the guy, and two people who aren't married or in a relationship already, I do think that that's typically what the problem is. Because I've had women come to me before saying, I have all these male friends and they're all telling me how wonderful I am and how amazing I am, how I make this great wife, but nobody wants to get with me. And I had to tell her, I said, listen, there's a very good chance it's a physical attraction issue, and for her, it was a weight thing, So again, it's tough. You don't want to make people feel bad or feel attacked about it, but you don't want to lie about what's a real issue that's occurring in so many situations.
And also the knock-on effect of what gaining that weight does to you. Like when you think about movement, let's say you're someone that would love to go on vacation. Well, let's face it, when you're, and I'm actually going to speak for myself. I know someone very close to me that gained maybe 80 to 100 pounds, and their partner was very honest with me because I was close to their partner as well.
Mm-hmm.
And she was like, look, it was that their moods have changed. They don't want sex anymore. They're not happy. They don't, the life and the excitement that they used to have about living, about traveling is all gone. And so I think that obviously the weight itself is a difficult situation to discuss, but the knock-on effect that comes with that is if you were with someone that used to be happy, excited about life, energized, like always on the go, and you fell in love with that type of personality and that changes, then I don't think it is just the weight. I don't want to dismiss what you're saying and the attraction piece, but I think there's so much more that goes with it that then impacts that dynamic where now you're not bonding from the attraction, but you're also, like, let's face it, confidence in the bedroom is sexy.
Yeah.
And when you don't feel good about yourself, you don't bring the confidence. When you don't bring the confidence to the bedroom and let's say you're hiding or, you're switching off all the lights and things like that, it does impact your relationship and the chemistry.
Yes, I had a couple once married, and in this situation, she had put on weight, but to him, it was like, I still think she's as beautiful as she ever was. I think she's amazing. And he said, but then she was self-conscious. And no matter how much he complimented her and would tell her, and he was genuine, like, this is not a problem for me. I don't mind it at all. She couldn't get over it. It's like you said, had to have the lights off, was very just, she didn't bring the same energy to the bedroom and in the relationship in general, more depressed, all these other things that happen because you don't feel good about yourself. And I also think, going back to your point of it's not just the weight, but the knockoff effect, it reminds me of a recent conversation I had with a woman who, she didn't want to date a man that was too much older than her. I want to say she was, let's say, 40 something. She didn't want to go past 50 or something like that. Or she didn't want to go past late 40s. And I said, well, what's wrong with dating a guy in his 50s or whatever? And she mentioned, well, I know a situation where when the man got older, he no longer wants to go out and all these things, you got to take care of him. And I said, listen, that's not a symptom of him getting older. That's a symptom of him not taking care of himself. And yes, what tends to happen is as we get older, we tend to get lazier with the way we take care of ourselves. And here's the knockoff effect of that. And so a lot of people don't realize it's always more than just that surface issue. It's not simply age. It's not simply weight. It's what comes with that typically. And so, yeah, I definitely think people have to be willing to go deeper with addressing those things. But definitely for any woman who hears that statement, it's something to consider. I think it's either that or he's just not done with running these streets, And again, that you'll know which one it is, or you'll have a better chance of knowing which one it is by just seeing how is he living his life. If he's out there with a bunch of different women, then I think it's safer to assume he just literally wants to still have his fun. But if he's over there looking for a wife, but telling you I don't want to ruin our friendship, there's more reason to believe it's an attraction issue.
Love the honesty, not the actual fact of it. Okay, it's not you, it's me.
So, again, we got always look at it from two sides, right? So side number one, we all know that's a cop-out for a lot of people. Let's say the woman is not showing up the way that he wants to, right? And a man expresses that's the reason why. Most men are met with pushback. It's not the woman saying, oh, you know what? You have a point. I haven't been I haven't been reciprocating, or I haven't been showing up the way that I should. No, it might be immediately met with, well, you haven't been doing this, or boom, boom, boom. It's just defensiveness. So it's just easier to say, it's not you, it's me. as well as there's the concern of how sensitive she might be and if it causes her to be emotional, cry. You don't, because a lot of people, a lot of men don't want to be the bad guy. All right. So in order to escape being the bad guy, it's easier to say, it's about me. I have the issue. Nothing's wrong with you. All right. But then there are scenarios where, again, he's being honest. It's not you, it's him. He's still, and I think great examples of those situations are a man who's not where he wants to be financially and in his career. That's a very common thing for him to feel like, I'm not where I want to be, and I can't give this woman what she deserves, or I can't focus on getting where I need to be while still trying to pour into this woman. And so it's best that I let her go so I can get back on track and get to where I need to get to first. Another example of that, again, might be the simple, I want to be in these streets. I haven't gotten enough of trying different women. And though I recognize this is an amazing, wonderful woman, this isn't time. And I know if I stay with her, I'm only going to hurt her. And if I hurt her that way, I'm going to ruin the chances of a possible future. Like, I'm a firm believer, I've always told men, even when I was younger, if you know you're not done, because once upon a time, there was a greater tendency for men to hold on to the woman they viewed as this is the one, even though I'm not done being a hoe and running around. But the problem is, she's probably going to eventually catch you. Now you're going to create a huge seed of distrust. And even if she stays with you, you've ruined the relationship. So you're defeating the whole purpose. You're better off being honest with her, even though, unfortunately, a lot of women don't believe the honesty sometimes, but you're better off saying to her, listen, I'm not ready for this. I do think you're potentially the woman I could be with and spend my life with, but I want to do my thing right now. And for a lot of women, to them, it's like, well, if I'm the one you view as your future, why wouldn't you want to give that up for me?
I was going to say the exact same thing, Stephan.
But it's the thing is, again, we have to understand how some men are wired and what some men are conditioned to. Meaning, if a man is being told constantly, you're young, you need to be out there, live your life, you're too young to be settling down, that can play into why he might feel that way. And more specifically, when he's a younger man, all right? It also might just be like, if a guy has never had success with women, right? And then he meets this woman at the same time that he's finally having success. And he's always wanted to see like how I can use my power and have fun and get women that I always dreamed about getting. But now I have this woman that I wanna be committed to her, but dang, I still wanna have fun. It's a conflict. And it's not that he can't try to give up the women for her. It's just that, again, you start to process, well, dang, I have all this life to live. Maybe if I could just try to have my fun for a little while. Because the idea is, I'm not going to try to live like this forever. The idea is, okay, maybe I just need to get this out of my system, which is why back in the days, they would do the whole hold on to the main one while still doing their thing on the side. Because the thought process was, this is just a temporary phase. And hopefully I can get through this without her ever finding out. And by the time I'm done, we can go live happily ever after and no one has to worry about anything. All right. But again, men are very sloppy with the way they move. Women are very detailed and pick up on every little thing. So she still usually finds out and it ends up being a disaster. You know, there's a huge disconnect with understanding the sexual urges of men and how it is biologically wired into us. Okay. I use this example at a recent event. You know, testosterone is a huge driver of libido. Not the only driver, huge driver though. And of course, higher testosterone leads to higher libido. Well, did you know that the average woman, and I believe can all be looked up, the average woman's testosterone ranges from 20 NGL to 90 NGL, okay? And they said maybe peak woman, 200. And that's a rare thing for a woman to have a 200 testosterone NGL. The average man is 300 to 1,000. So even on our worst day, we still have higher testosterone than the average peak woman. Not the average woman, the peak woman. The average woman, we blow her out the water as far as testosterone is concerned. That's going to lead to a very different way we process the sexual urge and how we handle it and things of that nature. Now, in today's world, testosterone levels in men are dropping for various reasons. Men are not as healthy as they used to be. So the lines are getting more blurred, all right? As well as I would argue there's probably women with more testosterone. Did you know that sugar, so one thing that has gone up over the years in our society is the consumption of sugar. Sugar lowers testosterone in men, raises testosterone in women.
Wow.
Okay? So and again, this is just small things, but there's a lot more that plays into all this. But all that to say that, yes, we're very differently wired when it comes to sex. And I think we're creating more frustration by fighting these differences rather than understanding and accepting them, all right? Because the differences also play into how we coexist in marriage and sexual expectations.
What up, homie? I got something free and new to share with you right now. How often are you visited by that negative voice in your head telling you that you're not smart enough, that you're not good enough, experienced enough, not fill in the blank? One of the most powerful things you can learn to do in life is to turn that negative voice into your bestie. And I want to teach you how to do that and so much more in my 4 steps to becoming confident workshop. And guys, the most amazing thing is you can actually register for completely free for this workshop. So click the link on your screen and I'll see you on the inside.
Men are being told women are just like men and want sex just like they do, if not more, okay? And that's simply not true. What women desire more than anything is intimacy, all right? And cool, it doesn't mean there aren't, I always say, there are women who want sex as much as a man. There are women who want sex more than a man. But the average woman does not want sex more than the average man wants sex, okay? Now, by understanding that difference and recognizing, okay, the average woman really craves intimacy more than anything. And the man craves sex, all right? He can do without the intimacy for a lot of them. He needs sex. If we accept that difference, then we can start pouring into each other without being frustrated with each other. Because if the man is being told, you want it just like me, and now that I'm trying to make my advance, you're tired, you got a headache, there's all these excuses, right? Or you're just not emotionally there, that either starts to lead to huge levels of frustration, resentment, because now I think, oh, you're withholding it purposely against me. You are using this to punish me because if you want it just as much as me, but you're going without it so long, what's wrong? Or you're sleeping with someone else. Rather than, no, you're overly stressed. You feel emotionally neglected, all right? Or I'm not paying attention to you in the bedroom as far as making sure your needs are being met. If we understood that, we could fix it, right? But you can't keep telling men we're the same and expect it to get fixed. So I think that we have to, we were talking about the guy who wants to run the streets and not be committed, but I do think we do have to understand the differences we have so that we can better address them and create more harmony with each other. And again, it's not to dismiss, because there are men who crave intimacy at a high level just like a woman does, but on average, we have a different way of being receptive to each other, intimately and sexually, that we have to get on the same page about.
I love that you said that so much, because I so 1,000% agree that I don't need to be the same. I actually don't want to be the same as my husband. I like the fact that we have different dynamics. And explaining what that thing is that you need. So to your point, if you need more intimacy, you should feel free, hopefully in a relationship, to be able to express, hey, I really would like some more intimacy, without the man judging you or throwing shade at you that, oh, here she goes again, she wants more intimacy, right? Like, you wouldn't want your partner to do that. And so the same should absolutely apply the other way around. I think it always comes from when you have your own perception and your own thoughts and you have the hormones that you have, to hear that a guy would rather go into the dating streets, even if he's like, I love you, you're the one, but I want to go over here. It just sounds maddening.
Yeah.
Because you're like, but if you're the one, why the hell would you go and like want to sow your oats, quote unquote. So understanding at least, look, I don't have to feel the way that he feels. I just have to understand that that's how it is. And now understanding that that's how it is, how do I maneuver? As a woman, if I'm with a guy who said, I love you, you mean the world to me, but I want to go sow my oats, I'm done. Like, I'm actually not giving you another chance. But that's just I'm just honest, Stephan.
No, and I appreciate the honesty, but that's like so here's the thing. So
Yeah.
this is what leads to a lot of men struggling with being real about that. Because they know your way of responding to that is common, okay? And so a man knows that he can't just say to the woman, I love you, I see you as the one, but I'm not ready yet to give up these streets. He knows if I tell you that I will probably lose you and never get my chance again. Which goes back to why back in the days, and even still now, men will try to hold on to her even though they know they're not ready for full commitment. Because they view it as, I will lose her if I don't do this. And I know she's rare. And again, I know it goes back to, well, if she's so rare and if he's so in love, why can't he give up being in the streets? Again, it's just a lot of differences, not even just how we are wired, right? And I don't want women to hear this and think this is all this excuses. I really am trying to create a better understanding of the differences we have. But I will also say what has made it even worse is we live in a society where temptation is at the highest level it's ever been. Access to people is at the highest level it's ever been. I remember it was Jordan Peterson who said, men now see more beautiful women in 10 minutes than kings saw their entire lifetime.
Wow.
Okay? It's overwhelming. It's too much. You'll hear a lot of guys now say to other men, you find a good one, get off the internet. Get off of Instagram. Because if you stay on there, you don't even have to be looking for it nowadays. You know how the algorithm is. If you dare even you interact with a picture ever of a pretty woman, Instagram will start showing you a bunch of other women. You're not even looking for it, all right? So it's created this society where there is a greater struggle with these things more than ever before, right? And I do think that, again, what happens is the reason why you or a lot of women, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, are like, well, I'm not dealing with you if that's the case, I'm done. It's almost like you take it personally, like you're saying, like, it's almost like what the woman hears is, I'm not good enough. And because I'm not good enough, you still want to be in these streets. When he's not, no, he's saying you are the best. You are the best, but I still have this urgent desire to try these things out. Now, not every man has that. There are a lot of men out there who are what I consider relationship guys, meaning they have no desire to be dating around and sleeping around. That's not who they are. They just want one woman, that's it, done. But yes, there are a lot of other men, and I would argue the more desirable the man, the higher the likelihood that he has that desire to want to test things out. All right. Or, be with different women, to be out there in the street, so to speak. And so that man, because he's desirable, has more women who want to be with him. And this is the guy who's going to struggle. But ultimately, women just have to understand it's not a reflection of how he views you. Okay. And I know that sounds so crazy, but it's just true. A man can literally look at a woman as she is it and still be at a place of struggle. Now, if he's already lived a life where he's sold his oats, whatever, then there's a greater chance that he's gonna be like, listen, I already lived that life. I found this amazing woman. I don't want nothing. I just want her and that's it, right? But again, the younger that he is, the less that he's gotten a chance to experience, then there is a chance that he may still have that desire in him. All right, which is, again, separate from how he views that specific woman.
Yeah, once upon a time, I would have absolutely taken it personally. But I've just done too much research, understanding biology, understanding where we come from. You go back to the caveman days, like there's so much data to prove that what you're saying is actually true from a biological standpoint. I just don't fight it anymore. I think where I come from is that even if it's true, even if they think I'm the most amazing woman on earth and you want to go, so like, you should have the life you want. If that's what you need to do and you need to go and test the streets and see if there's, experience, I actually get it. Like, I'm not here to persuade you, but I'm not waiting around. Okay. I know what I want. If I'm looking for a marriage, I'm looking for someone that wants the same thing I do. Versus, wait, okay, you go, I'll be here when you come back. Like, fuck that shit. I ain't waiting around. So I think that's where I come from.
And that I 100% agree with. I would never tell a woman that she's obligated to wait around because this man wants to do his thing. Where I would give some pushback.
Yeah, come on, bring it on, Stephan.
Is now, and let me ask this question first. So let's say a year passes.
Yeah.
All right. You've been dating, nothing's popped off, and at this moment you are single, still looking for something serious. This man comes back into your life, right? You guys cross paths, and he says, "Listen, I've done my thing. I'm done with that. I want to be with just you." There you go.
Yeah, right. I still say no.
Exactly. That's the thing. That's
Oh my
that's where my
God,
pushback
that's so
comes
right.
in. Because I am okay, and of course, no woman has to or should accept that lifestyle that does not work for
Yeah.
her. No woman should have to wait. But why then do we still hold it against him if when he comes back, that is no longer an issue?
I think, look, it would be nuanced in knowing what that relationship was like. Because if I was with them for a year and I'd fallen in love and they'd fallen in love with me, and then they said, hey, look, I know we've been together for a year, I know we're talking about marriage, but I want to go sow my oats over here. I think the heartbreak of that would be like, the fact that they can break my heart, why didn't they say that from the beginning? Did they know that? Did they just hope that that it would work out and then they realized? So I do think it would be nuanced, because then opening up my heart again to someone that's broken it, especially just speaking from experience, having gone through that with a guy for like almost 4 years before Tom, where he was, it's not the same, but he was very emotionally abusive. And so it was very much broke my heart, tried to repair it. When my heart was repaired again, he came back, he ripped it open again. And so I just had that turbulent emotion. And so I bring probably that trauma into that relationship where I go, oh, you broke my heart once? No, you're never going to do it again.
I understand. But this again goes back to why. So when women ask, why don't men just be honest about X, Y, Z? This is why. Because now, see, the man's logic is, I'm being honest with you because I don't want to hurt you more. Because I don't want to be in a position where I'm going to cheat on you or whatever. Better to let you know, let go so I can do my thing, or give you the choice of how you want to proceed. Boom, boom. He thinks he's doing something honorable in that moment, though it's not what you want to hear, though it's not what we desired for how things to go. But he's thinking that's the right thing to do. And in the end, he's still wrong. In the end, he still loses because he was honest. And so now the man will rationalize, well, I'm just not going to say anything. I'm better off taking my chances, doing my thing on the side. Not saying a man should do that. I'm just telling you how some men are thinking. Better to take my chance, do anything on the side, and hopefully I can get through that while still holding on to the woman that I want to be with. And then hopefully I can get through that phase, and then I can just continue with her and be committed, And that's why men do what they do. That's why they don't simply just, like people always say, if you're going to cheat, why don't you just leave? This is one of the reasons why. Because some of them don't want to actually leave. Some of them want to stay where they are, but they're battling this other desire for what, again, there's various reasons why men struggle with that. Some of it's biological, some of it is societal, all kinds of different reasons. You know what I'm saying? But it's a tough thing.
And you think that, because obviously my mind then goes to just control your desire. But do you, no, I'll let you speak.
No, I mean, yeah, so this is another thing people won't like, but I'm just gonna be real. I'm a firm believer now that a lot of discipline is circumstantial, okay? And what I mean by that is, so this is the example I'll give. If you had two women trying to lose weight, and to lose weight, they had to give up chocolate cake, right? Now, from the beginning, one woman has a level 3 desire for chocolate cake. The other woman has a level 8 desire for chocolate cake. From the beginning, they're operating from two different levels of struggle, okay? So their discipline is not gonna look the same. Now, if over the next 30 days, level 3 desire only had to see chocolate cake once. Level 8 desire had to see chocolate cake every day for the next 30 days. So now let's say level 8 desire takes 4 bites. Level 3 desire takes 2 bites. People will say level 3 desire was more disciplined. She only had chocolate cake twice in 30 days. The other lady had 4 times, but the other lady had to face temptation 30 times. She had 30 opportunities. She actually took it at a less percentage. She also was operating from a higher desire initially, okay? So when we say just control your urges, well, a lot of that is gonna also be contingent on managing your circumstances, all right? When I do talk to men, I tell them, listen, if you wanna be faithful, The key is not simply learning how to say no to a woman. It's learning how to not to even be in that position. All right? You have to think ahead and say, okay, if going here makes me susceptible to making a mistake or making a bad decision, don't even go there. All right? If doing this thing, whatever it is, you have to recognize 3-4 steps ahead and cut it off at the root. All right? Because again, to control the urge is going to be a lot more difficult if you're already in the moment, if you're already in the face of it, you see? And that's where a lot of people mess up. They get too far down the road and now it's just, for various reasons. And everyone can say, oh, well, I wouldn't do it if I was me. So this is another way that it's circumstantial. I'm a firm believer, listen, anyone is capable of crossing a line with the right circumstances in place. So I always say, okay, there's a woman out there who will say, I would never cheat on my man. All right, but what if it was Brad Pitt or whoever they love and adore and think is so amazing, and you were in some island somewhere and no one knew about it, and if we start adding things, it's gonna start making you question. Well,
go on, Stephan.
Exactly. All right. You might just pull that trigger. You might. And it may not even be just simply because he's there. It might be if he catches you at a time where you're vulnerable, where you've been neglected in your relationship. Because a lot of these things are very in the moment. A lot of people who struggle with controlling their urges, again, whether it's sex, whether it's food, whether it's alcohol, is that the moment has gotten the best of them. All right. So in general, again, the person who's trying to give up liquor, they may literally have in their mind said, I am rejecting liquor, right? I'm done with it. I'm good. And go the next 6-7 months without it. But then one day they end up at a party. They didn't even know liquor was going to be served. Now liquor's being served. Everyone's drinking. People don't even know that they're trying to get over their alcoholism. Oh, I had this drink. Don't worry. Peer pressure. And then I'll just take a sip. It's not a big deal. I'll take a sip. I'll be fine. And then boom, before you know it, they're wasted. All right. They got lost in the moment. But it doesn't mean that their overall mindset and personality was, I want to go out there and be a drinker. I want to be an alcoholic again. You see what I'm saying? So it's a tricky battle. This is why I also feel like the control your urges thing can get tricky, is because I can tell you, as I have gotten healthier as a man, the urges got stronger. All right. And I'm someone who's been abstinent as long as 5 years in my life. All right. I've probably spent more of my adult life in stages of abstinence than being active. But I know firsthand, the more I got in shape, the healthier I got, the better I took care of myself, the harder it got, regardless of any other circumstance. So it gets tricky. And I think, again, it's not to make an excuse for people and to make it okay. I do think there needs to be more grace when people stumble, right? And we just need to understand that how we're wired and what we're surrounded by is going to make things either more difficult or less difficult for people to manage.
Now, I very much appreciate your transparency, and I'm always trying not to blame people, but just to understand. And that analogy of the percentile of, if you're level 3 or level 8 with the chocolate cake actually really hit me. So that was, great breakdown there. All right, next one.
All right.
How do you know that guy?
Yeah, that pretty much means, what's your history with him? What do you guys have going? Yes, have you slept with him? What do you guys have going on? Why does he even have access to you? What is he to you? What's the deal? Because he may perceive that man as either a potential threat or a current threat.
All right, nice and easy.
Yeah.
You were missed versus I miss you.
Oh, man, let me tell you. So I'm big on this one. I'm a firm believer that when someone says you were missed rather than they are not taking full ownership of their feelings. Or they don't actually feel that way. They're just trying to appease you by saying it. All right? So basically, I don't want to say I miss you because that's going to make you think I'm really into you on a level that I'm not. But I recognize you want to hear something to that nature. So if you just told me you miss me, right? But I don't really want to say I miss you because I really didn't miss you. I might then default to where you were missed, But I also think that a lot of people do it because, again, expressing those types of feelings requires a level of vulnerability. There's a lot of people who are afraid to be vulnerable in that way. And so it takes a little bit of the edge off to say you were missed versus I miss you, because I have to now own my feelings. I have to acknowledge how deeply I feel about you. I have to acknowledge the impact that your absence had on me. I don't want to go there. So it's easier just to say you were missed, you know? And I think it can happen even in platonic situations. It can happen with, I think, parent to child or child to parent, where they didn't grow up being able to express to their parent, I love you, and their parent never did it to them. And so now when they get older, it's awkward, and they don't know how to say it. It's so weird to say, I love you. So they initially might just say, you were missed or miss you too. They shorten it, And I'm not gonna lie, even I've done it at times, but now like I can say to my mother, I love you too, And I know when if I say love you too, I'm just shortening because I might be speaking really quick. But I can say to her flat out, I love you. I can say to my sisters, I love you. But I know for people, their emotional expression has been stunted for various reasons because they were not raised in a household that did that. And so now they struggle with owning those feelings as an adult.
Yeah, there's such a difference to hear I love you versus love you.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And again, I think what's also important is recognizing, is this a consistent issue for them with people in general or just with you? Mm-hmm. Because if they can say I love you to all these different people, but with you they can't, that's a bigger cause for concern. And now, and again, it doesn't mean it can't still be an issue of struggling to be vulnerable to the person we have a deeper feelings for, deeper romantic desires for, but it's still an issue that needs to be resolved because to me, again, it speaks to a bigger problem. It doesn't just stop there. If they have blockage there, where else has the blockage poured over into? For many people, for example, that blockage goes from not being able to say, I love you to lack of affection. They struggle with being affectionate with someone. It struggles to their inability to give compliments or receive compliments. You see what I'm saying? It starts to go and show in different ways. So you can't just think, oh, okay, we're good, just even though they can't say it. No, let's find out why. And let's also make sure we're paying attention to, are there other areas that this is showing up in?
How do you then start addressing it? Because that would be really difficult in a moment where, let's say you say to somebody, I miss you, or I really miss you, and someone's like, yeah, you were missed too. How do you address that with them?
So let me start by saying this. Everyone has to be prepared that when you ask a question, you may get an answer you don't want to receive. Mm-hmm. All right. And you have to be at peace with that, because asking a question is not to receive the answer we want. It's to receive clarity on the issue that we're asking about. All right. And so it boils down to just asking, hey, I notice you never say I love you. You never say I miss you. What's going on with that? Now granted, the most common response will probably be to dance around the issue. Mm-hmm. Oh, I just didn't even realize it. Or, oh, I didn't think it was a big deal or whatever.
Or oh, you're so sensitive. Why does that matter?
Well, then you respond because it feels very disconnected when you don't say I. I feel like there's something you're either holding back or that's blocking you, or maybe that you don't really feel that way about me. So it would make me feel a lot better if I could hear you say, I love you, I miss you. You know what I'm saying? And again, now you're giving them the opportunity, you're explaining to them why it's important, and you're giving them the opportunity to now address and correct it. If they still refuse, to me, that speaks to a bigger issue. And again, whether someone thinks that should be a big deal or not, if it's making you feel some kind of way, it's a problem. Because here's the thing. If you're a woman, you're dating this man, he never says I. You bring it up to him, he's like, oh, it's not a big deal, you're being too sensitive. I care for you. You don't need me to say I, right? And you suck it up because everybody told you it's not a big deal, you're making a big deal about nothing. But every time he says miss you or love you, it bothers you. It hurts you. Now you're going to start to have a negative energy that starts to come out. You're going to start to feel devalued in a relationship. That will pour over in how you speak to him and treat him. You will start to see the relationship deteriorate because you're suppressing how you genuinely feel about something that isn't being corrected. Mm. People have to stop worrying about, I don't care if anyone else thinks it's a big deal or not. It doesn't matter to you. Your feelings matter. And if they cannot be addressed and corrected, you got to let that person go.
Yeah, I love that last part because that's really also the key is that if you're in a relationship that is very genuine, you want to know and hear your partner's needs. And then if it doesn't cross a barrier, you know, a value system or morals, you hopefully want to be able to help and reciprocate and give them what your partner needs if they vocalized it. And so by doing that and then seeing if they're able to hear you and then adjust, I think is super powerful. And to your point, if they're not able to, you just have to ask yourself, is that a relationship you want to be involved in?
Exactly. That's it. It's really, really that simple.
Oh, Stephan, at least you have a laundry list of things to go through, but unfortunately we're out of time. Where can people find you and all the amazing things that you do?
They can find me everywhere, Stephan Speaks, Stephan Speaks, on YouTube, Instagram, my site, all over the place.
If you want to learn how to actually spot the signs that they're lying, keep watching.
We are constantly speed reading cues. Like today we're talking about the specific steps in speed reading, but you're actually already doing it. Your brain is constantly looking for hundreds, if not thousands of cues in a day. That's why people can get so drained by social interactions, especially like my introverts and my ambiverts. I'm an ambivert. You know, introverts are so drained because they're getting a barrage of cues thrown at them. They don't know how to interpret always. So you're constantly speed reading. And what happens is when our brain sees a negative cue, it affects our body, it affects our physiology. So for example, one study, this was helpful for me because it made me understand why I get social anxiety sometimes. They had people go into a room and they flashed them a cue of social rejection. So a cue of social rejection could be an eye roll. It could be a scoff and turn away. It could even be a negative dismissive voice tone like, great idea, right? Those are all cues of social rejection and we don't like them, right? We do not like to be socially rejected. So when they flashed this cue of social rejection, people's field of vision increased. Their pupils dilated immediately so they could take in more of the environment. Why? If we see a cue of social rejection, our body goes, uh-oh, are there more cues? Who else is sending me cues? Do I have to leave? Where's my escape route? And what do I do? Right? Yeah. So our body is reacting to these whether we know it or not. That's why you could be with someone and be like, I don't feel good. Why do I not trust this person? Is your body is reading these cues and your instinct is like, something's off here. And so if you name it, one, you feel more in control of it. And two, it usually deactivates it. And here's the second study. So the study was done at UCLA by Dr. Matthew Lieberman. And what he wanted to know is, okay, we get sent these cues, these negative cues, and we catch them. You know, negative cues are contagious. For example, if he puts people in a brain scanner and he shows them a fear face. So if I show you a fear face, so a fear face is, we raise our eyebrows up, we widen our eyes, we, like that's a fear face. If you were to see that face on the subway, you'd be like, what's wrong?
Oh yeah.
Like
clutch my bag, make sure that I'm near the door that I can run.
I can give you fear just by showing you that face. And that is exactly what he found. Is if he puts people in an MRI machine and he shows them a fearful face, they will catch the fear, okay? So that's very powerful. And it's like, what do we do with that? So what he found is when he instructed participants to label the emotion, fear, it immediately deactivated that response in their brain. So they see fear, it activates fear in their amygdala, and they say fear, the amygdala activation goes away. So I think that there's an empowerment to knowing these cues that are being sent to you. So if you're on a date or you're in a meeting and you see someone who sends a cue to you that you don't like, and you can go lip purse, disgust, you don't catch it. It's less contagious. You immediately feel more in control of it, and then you can decide what to do next. Do you confirm it? Do you ignore it? Do you say this person's not for me? So much easier, less overthinking at the end of the day.
Yeah. Oh my God, that's so amazing. And to think that you can catch fear is insane. I've got actually something for you that I'd like to ask you.
Oh.
I don't know the answer. So I got my brain scanned by Dr. Amen.
Yes.
And as part of the test, they show you these faces and they flash forward. Yeah. And you have to say which one's anger, which one's fear, which one's happy, which one's sad, and which one's neutral. And so it shows you a face and it basically you have to touch the word of the expression. At the end, and I didn't actually get deep into it, but at the end, he gives you the results. And he said, Lisa, you're really good at detecting happy. You're really good at detecting angry and neutral, but I'm terrible at detecting fear, that I kept misinterpreting it as happy. And I'm like, I don't know if that's good. Like, I don't understand what that means. So what do you think that means?
Probably that, so fear, let's look at them, right? So So anger is a downward face. You harden your lower lids, you press your lips together. Fear is a big face, right? You widen your eyes, you widen your eyebrows, you open your mouth. It's not that far away from happiness, right? So if this is happiness, right, and this is fear, they're both mouth open. So it's like, it's almost as if you're seeing fear as excited.
Yes. Yes, that's exactly it.
Like emotionally stimulated.
Yes.
A little bit.
But yeah.
So that means that has a really big effect for you for the relationships in your life. If you misinterpret fear as happiness, it means when you're making someone nervous, you think you're actually stimulating them.
And that's why I brought it up, because I thought if we aren't detecting the right cues, how often do people leave and you're like, that was the best freaking date? Like, I nailed it, or the best interview, or the best job interview, whatever, right? And you think you've nailed it.
Totally.
And then you get all the feedback that it was terrible, that they don't want to see you anymore. And you're like, what the hell happened?
That's it. That is the single biggest way that we get students. Is oftentimes our students, or most of our students, are like high achieving professionals.
And this is at your school?
At my school, that they don't come to us necessarily because they had a bad performance review. That does happen. It's actually usually someone thinks, I thought I killed it in my performance review. I thought I am nailing it in these interviews, and I'm just not getting any jobs. I'm getting terrible feedback. It's that horrible feeling when you think something went well and then you're rejected, which is worse than doing bad at something. When you know you're bad at something, you can work on it, right? When you think you're good at something and then you're blindsided, that feeling of being blindsided, my mission is to help people never feel blindsided. I don't want you to feel blindsided by a bad person, by a bad actor, by a bad boyfriend, by a cheating incident. I don't want you to feel blindsided at work where you thought you did great in a presentation and actually it didn't land, or you thought you did a good interview, didn't land. I think that we can actually tackle that. I think we can make sure that we're not blindsided.
So what are the keys to not be blindsided?
Okay, so, well, there's two sides of cues, right? There's decoding and encoding. So we've been talking a lot about decoding. So decoding are noticing the signals that are being sent to you and being able to accurately read them and then knowing what to do. That's one way of not being blindsided, is you're accurately able to decode. The other way is encoding. Encoding are the social signals you send. So it's knowing what cues you are sending with your hands, your voice, what we were talking about at the beginning about your punctuator. That's actually encoding. And that's another way to not be blindsided, is making sure that you know that you're going in as your most charismatic, your most confident self, so that you are showing up as your best self. That helps not being blindsided. Obviously, you can't control the other person, but those kind of work together. So when you learn a cue, whenever I teach it, it's like, okay, it's the decoding. So you know that disgust, if you see it, someone might be, ugh, I don't like this. Like if someone says to you, oh yeah, I loved you in that project. They probably didn't, unless you baseline them that. Great, you don't want to be blindsided and be like, hey, I'd love to get into the nitty gritty of that. What parts did you like? But there has to be something you didn't like. I'd love to know what that is, right? Like you just decoded something that allows you to then be like, no, I want to get the full picture here, right? Like I don't want to be blindsided on this. And then next time, encoding to make sure you are not accidentally showing disgust, right? So every cue has both sides, the decode and the encode.
I love that. And one question, does it make a difference if you're a man or a woman?
I'm gonna say no. I'm gonna say no, because as humans, we are constantly decoding and encoding. We're decoding with other women, we're encoding with other men. Like, it doesn't matter. Those two mechanisms are always working. So I'm gonna say no. There are certain cues that might come across differently, but for the most part, no, it doesn't matter. Every single human should know how to decode and encode these cues.
What codes are slightly different for the men and women?
Women flirt differently than men. Women instinctually, and also we are attracted to different things on men and women. So for example, with women, we typically, that Marilyn Monroe look, whenever you're trying to think about like what's attractive in a woman, Marilyn Monroe had it down. I don't know if she did it naturally or she learned it, but she would tilt her head up, she would smile a lot, she'd hood her lids. And so that's why you'll notice if a woman's being very flirtatious, they tend to go soft, is what I say. So you'll notice like when women are being particularly flirtatious, they tend to like go soft in their neck. Right? They tend to go soft in their wrist, right? So you'll notice a woman will often go soft in her wrists like this. You'll notice that like when women smoke cigarettes, they tend to smoke like this. like very soft in the wrist. They expose part of the wrist. When men smoke, they tend to smoke like this.
Oh, and that is the exposing of the wrist. Is that the same thing then for the neck?
Same.
Oh,
yes. So we have a lot of pheromones. We release a lot of scent here, right? This is also a very vulnerable part of our body, right? We have a lot of veins here. And so this is, we don't want to expose it if we feel uncomfortable. So a woman will often look open, right? And expose things when she exposes. So she'll see she smokes like this, exposing, or she'll sit like this, exposing, or she'll make hand gestures like this, exposing, whereas men almost very rarely do, and they want to look strong, right? Like this part of a man is, I find very attractive. Do you like this
the
part
arms,
of a man?
Yeah,
like the front of the arm, like the forearm. I'm like, like we like a strong man.
You
So
even
we
did that.
want- Yeah, I want to see like, you know, some veins and like, you know what I mean? Right? Like, so like that's like strength, right? Because you can have muscles here. And so a man will often be more like this. Like he'll gesture more with like this showing, and he'll like smoke like this. He'll sit like this, much more this way. You also have men who will expose this, and that's a softer side of them, right? And certain people are attracted to that, right? So it's a spectrum.
Yeah, I love that because the amount of times that we've spoken, it never dawned on me that if there were different cues from, because I think of it just like there are different cues from different like nationalities, like even just like the Greeks, right? They behave in a certain way that in another, nationality may seem insane or crazy.
Yes. Actually, we should have made a cultural note with nodding. I should have made this note. So in my book, I try to always have culturally specific references because there are universal cues, of course, but there are, of course, cultural differences. And I try to reference them so we know. So for example, this in Western cultures and European cultures and every culture except Bulgaria, India, and Pakistan, this means yes.
The nodding.
This means no.
Yes.
Right? So this means I agree with you, keep going, keep talking. And this means I don't like it, stop talking, no, I don't want it. In India, Bulgaria, and Pakistan, it's different. Like they often will nod like this. Sometimes this means yes. Sometimes they nod like this. It means something different. So in that particular culture, there's a difference in the way that we nod. And also like in Italy, the amount of hand gestures that you can use in a conversation is much higher than here.
Oh yes,
right. Like
the Greeks.
Like okay, yeah. So like if you're not using a lot of hand gestures, there something's wrong, right? Where here, if you were to use the same amount of hand gestures, people would think it was distracting. Now, hand gestures, visible hands are good universally, but the amount of good is different for cultures. Right. So most cues have a universal kind of basis, but how that they're used has a spectrum, right? Like even the amount of eye contact, like in Western cultures, I just looked up this stat. In Western cultures, we like 60 to 70% eye contact during conversation. So that means we can look away when we're thinking or when we're processing something. I just read this. I think it was Dr. Michael Argyle found that we like to, when we're speaking, we only make eye contact 41% of the time. Right? Because when I'm processing, like when I was just trying to remember that, I was closing my eyes because I was like trying to remember the statistic. And you were okay with that because you recognize, she's processing.
Yes.
So like there's a cue that I constantly want to debunk, which drives me crazy, which is when you look up to the left, you're lying. When you look up to the right, you're not true. Not true. In fact, for lefties, it can be reversed. You also have people who will process that way, right? This is an important thing during your baseline. So we can go back to baselining, right? We were talking about at the beginning. Where does someone look when they're telling the truth? That is something you should know about the three most important people in your life. So think about right now, my challenge for anyone who's learning speed reading is think of 3 people in your life that you want to be able to speed read. It could be someone who's been in your life a long time. It could also be a new person. Like if you're going on a date coming up or there's someone you're newly dating. So think of those 3 people. If you can, get out a pen and paper. It really helps to write this down and make 3 columns. Baseline, red flags, confirmation. In the baseline column, I want you to write down everything they do when they're telling the truth. They nod, they make certain facial expressions. Which way do they look when they're telling the truth? The way that you find this out is you ask non-socially scripted questions that someone wouldn't lie about. So in our lab, I love to have, do lie detection research. We have people come into our lab and we ask them the basic socially scripted questions, similar to what you would do on a date. So where are you from? What's your name? How old are you? Right? Like the kind of the basic things that like people aren't even thinking, and we see what do they look like. And we literally, we code all their cues from toes all the way up. Like, are they a shaker? Right? Like, do they, right? Are they that when they're telling the truth? right? How do they sit? Are they relaxed? Right? So we code everything. And then we go into what we call our emotional baseline questions. These are questions that we don't think that they have socially scripted. They're a little bit unique. And they should like arouse them a little bit, not sexually, but just like in terms of like, it should like make them feel something, but they wouldn't lie about it. So a great one is, you want to do it? Should I ask you?
Yeah.
Okay, here's one. What did you have for breakfast yesterday?
Chicken with encrusted in almonds, asparagus and peppers and olives.
Okay, so we should just baseline Lisa, right? So you looked up and to your left.
Yeah.
That's how you access the memory.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's really important to know, where does someone access their memories? So when you just recalled, you immediately looked up. So you access memories up there. So if I were baselining you, I would say, okay, access his memories up to their left.
And that's because that's something that, why would I even lie? So assume that that is the answer they'd give, identify where they're looking, jot that down.
Right.
Got it.
And like you were very like direct and very specific. You actually had your hands quite closed. You weren't using a lot of facial expressions. So that is how you look when you're recalling something honest. Then the next level, the next column is the red flag column. This is where you go into questions where you're looking to see, you either were already suspicious or you want to make sure they're telling you the truth, and you're looking for differences.
I'm like getting nervous now.
Don't worry, I'm not going to do it to you right now. I'm not going to do it to you right now. Yeah, I wouldn't call your tell out on camera. We could do it later.
Okay.
Overdid it. Okay, so let's say in a theoretical example that then, okay, so I just baselined you on a date and I'm like, okay, she accesses memories over there. If I were to say, so why'd you break up with your ex? Right? Or tell me about your relationship with your ex. Or have you ever cheated on someone? Right, like all those questions.
Yeah.
If that person's telling the truth, you can usually know, do they look like what they just look like? Right? Like, did they look up that way, or did they start looking up another way or down or away? Right? You can look for differences in that. So that's that red flag area. Is like, what's different all of a sudden that I've just been asking all these questions. I also like in that emotional baseline to stay as much as possible. Like in our lab, we ask a lot of hard questions and we say, please tell us the truth. And we'll often say things like, what was your worst experience at your last job? And there's no reason for them to lie with us. And you'll see them get nervous, upset. They'll show negative emotions, right? But they're true emotions. And then we play a little game in our lab, and you can do this at home if you'd like, where we ask them to lie to us. And we do it with two different scenarios. First, we ask them to tell us their most embarrassing moment. This is a great one, by the way. If you're on a date, ask someone, what was your most embarrassing moment, right? That way you're accessing an emotion that was embarrassing, right? It's going to be negative. You're going to see negative things. So we ask them, tell us your most embarrassing story and give us as much detail as possible. We have some great stories. People tell us some really funny, embarrassing moments, and people like sweat and people like get really anxious about it, right? So they tell us their most embarrassing story. And then we ask them, please come up with a fake embarrassing story and tell it to us as if it's real. And we don't give them much time. And we keep them on camera the entire time to like try to see how fast they process a lie. Because we ask them to lie to us, right? Then they deliver the fake embarrassing story. And it's incredible how different they look. You will see what lying looks like in action. And there are a couple of red flags that come up over and over again. So I call these the danger zone cues, right? So danger zone cues, this is in my book, I have a chapter on this, and like it was so long that my editor was like, we can't. I was like, but there are so many.
That's your next book.
Yeah, maybe.
The danger cues.
Oh my goodness. So yes, so there's a lot of them, but we could talk about a couple of just ones that are common. Now, there's no Pinocchio's nose. There's no way to know for sure if someone is lying. If there was, we wouldn't have any liars, right? But there are statistical cues to deceit. Cues that often come up over and over again when someone is lying. So statistically speaking, these are pretty common, but they're not foolproof, right? That's why you have to make sure you're baselining and you have to make sure you confirm.
I love that.
Okay. So common, touching the nose. For some reason, we have tissue in our nose that itches and swells with blood when we lie. And so people will often do that when they're lying. Cheaters, if you watch the show Cheaters or you watch any show where people are talking to cheaters, you'll notice that cheaters will often touch their nose when they do it, especially if they're lying about it. It's like a shame thing. So touching the nose all of a sudden. Now, if someone's been touching the nose during their baseline, not a red flag.
Or if they've got allergies or a cold, not a red flag.
Right. But if all of a sudden they're like, well, my ex, she was, we were just had a lot of differences. Like there is a lot there, right? Like that's more questions. That's the confirmation column, which is the third one. So touching the nose is one of them. A lip purse is another. So a lip purse is when we press our lips into a hard line. We often do this when withholding. You'll often people will, well, they're like trying to think, how do I say this in a way that's not going to sound terrible? Like if you ask someone a hard question, like how much do you weigh? They'll be like, like they immediately lip purse because we don't want to answer that question. So lip pursing is not a sign of lying, but it's a sign of like, I don't love this question and I might be thinking about how I'm withholding.
Like hesitation.
Yes, like hesitation, withholding. So when I see it, I'm always, again, I'm just making a note, like I'm paying attention, like, there was something there that made them feel like I have to hold back a little bit, right? And that's when I'll say like, hey, like, we're good. Like, you know, I'm on your side. Like, I just want to know, honestly, like, you're not going to upset me.
Yeah, because that's what I was thinking. That moment, they may be thinking, oh, like out of anxiety, right? Like, and it may not come out as like they're lying, but they have the anxiety over the question, so they pierce their lips.
Yes. So
and now you may perceive it as
introverts. So I work with a lot of introverts and I say we have to respect our introverts. So introverts often, if they're asked too personal of a question or they're asked to brainstorm on the spot, an introvert is much more introspective. They like to take time to focus. They don't like verbalizing all their feelings or their ideas. So if you're in a meeting with them and you're like, so Lisa, tell me what you think. I like it. Like, it's not necessarily that they're lying. It's just that you put them on the spot in a way that makes them feel uncomfortable. So for them, I say, okay, if you saw that after the meeting, follow up in writing. Don't approach them after the meeting. That's also going to make an introvert nervous. In writing, say, hey, I just want to follow up with the meeting. I know I asked you very quickly about your thoughts on the project, but I'd love if you have any other thoughts to share. In the next few days, email those over. Like, respectful. Like, I'm not going to like, so tell me really, what do you really think about that? That's like an introvert. It's like, no, please, no. Right. So a lip purse is just a sign of something, dig deeper there. The shame gesture is another one. Shame is when we touch the side of our forehead. I don't know why. I think it's an eye blocking behavior. Like when we block. So we don't like something as humans. We do a number of things. We block. So we'll often cross our arms and try to like get away from it. We distance, right? We might turn away. We also will sometimes cover our eyes or pinch the bridge of our eyes. It's a way of like, I don't like it. Like little kids, when they hear bad news, they like, right? It's the same kind of instinct as human. We don't like something. So blocking behaviors like closing off or shutting down. Anytime you see a sudden difference in a baseline, you're like, what is happening?
Actually, I'd love to go a little deeper when you said if you're dealing with an introvert. So how many, and you mentioned it slightly earlier about personality traits.
Yes.
And so as I was thinking about, as you break it down, help me navigate different types of personalities and different people's moods.
Yes.
Because I assume, right, it's like, let's say you've caught me on a really bad day. Like things are just not going well in my life. Let's say something really bad has happened at work. Someone's also quit. Someone in my family is like just imagine the worst case scenario. And now I walk in the room. I'm not necessarily going to walk in the room as my typical like lively self. So the cues I may be giving can be interpreted maybe in a wrong manner.
For sure.
Based on who they think I am, but actually it's my mood.
Okay, so that's the third column, confirmation. Moods, context, right? Like I am not my best self in a very loud environment. Like I'm much quieter, I'm much more nervous. Like that would not be me on a good day. So context, mood, those can all change things. So the last column is confirmation. It's that you baseline someone, you know what they look like when they're honest, telling the truth. Then you see a couple of red flags in this area. The third column is the most important. It's your column where you're like, is this really what I saw? And what is the reason for this? I like to take a Pollyanna approach to lie detection in that we should assume the best, right? We have to assume the best in people because if we do that, we are not going to get as many false positives, right? Or like we're not going to see as many false lies.
Oh, because I do the opposite. I almost go in scrutinizing people until they've proven. I think that's from having been bullied as a kid probably and having trust issues with people when I first meet them.
Absolutely. That's a filter that you have. So they actually studied this. They found that people who are more skeptical, people who are not Pollyanna, catch less lies.
Oh, what?
And have more false positives. Whereas Pollyannas, people who are more trusting, people who have more of an optimistic outlook, actually do better at catching the lies.
Wow.
So I want you to really go into it with, I noticed all these things, but I'm not going to make a judgment yet. I need to confirm. And the confirmation column can look a lot of different ways. It can be a second date, right? Like, let's see if the mood is different. It can be a change of context. Hey, let's get out of here and go get some coffee, or like go to a quieter bar. Or hey, let's move into the kitchen. It's so loud in this room, right? So it can be a move of context. It can be a different, another time. It could also be going into the topic again with a different set of questions, right? So if it was, let's say that you saw a lot of red flags about their ex, right? And you're like, oh my goodness, I saw all kinds of red flags. Now, we don't know why. We don't know if it's because that ex cheated on them or they were cheating on that ex. They don't know if it's because it was a bad breakup. We don't know why. So that confirmation column could be simply asking better, more deeper questions about that topic so you can figure out what is the source of this cue, right? A lot of the times with cues, you'll see a negative cue, but you don't know what it is. Like if I'm with someone and I see contempt, contempt is the microexpression of hatred or disdain. It's a one-sided mouth raise.
And it's what, like the number one thing that all marriages, I think, end up failing if they see the sign of contempt.
Right. So Dr. John Gottman can predict with 93.6% accuracy if a couple will get divorced by watching a silent video of them just looking for contempt. It's a very negative emotion. It's often a sign of disrespect, right? So if someone's like showing contempt at you, that means there's a scorn, disrespect. It's very hard to get over that in a relationship. So let's say that I'm in a conversation with someone or I'm, hiring someone and I see contempt. I cannot assume that contempt is about me. It might be, but it also could be self-contempt. It could be contempt for the question. It could be contempt for a very, very bad day and they're having an internal dialogue that's very negative. So that's why that confirmation column is so important. Okay, if let's say I'm in an interview and someone shows me contempt and I'm like, what is this? Is it me? Is it the job? And then I'm like, okay, I want to do a second interview and I'm going to bring someone else so they can see if they got it. And we're going to change the context. I'm not going to do Zoom. I want to do in person, right? And then I do the interview again and I ask a different set of questions. And maybe I ask the same question that caused the contempt last time in a different way. And I see, does it come up again, right? Is it different in context? And that confirmation column is your last one. I like to look for a rule of 3. If I see the same negative cluster 3 times in a row with 3 different contexts or 3 different questions, I go, okay, it's time for me to make a decision. That's sort of my rule of thumb. So the confirmation column is how we make sure that a mood doesn't give us a false answer.
That's amazing. How often have you been wrong after the 3 strikes?
Often. That's why that confirmation column is an essential part of the process. I think the biggest mistake that people make is they say, he had a terrible red flag, I can't trust him. But if you don't do that 3rd column, you're gonna misinterpret. It's the only way to make sure that we're being accurate readers of people. And that's the whole goal here, right? I approach relationships as we're all searching for connection. People are inherently good. We're trying to make amazing relationships. And so we have to give people the benefit of working to get the 3 confirmations before we write them off or dismiss them or create a boundary, because otherwise we might miss opportunities to connect.
Yeah, it's so freaking powerful. Talk to me also though about the, the hearing gestures that we don't necessarily realize that we're doing. So in our voices, even if you weren't looking at me, you can tell whether I'm animated, that you can actually hear someone's mood based on their body language that you can't necessarily see.
Yes. Okay. So vocal baseline is another way you can do this. So if you do a lot of phone calls, this is a really helpful one. But if you have an ear for it, you like vocal baseline. So vocal baseline is how does someone sound when they're telling the truth and when they're, acting a certain way. One experiment we did in our lab is I wanted to know if facial expressions change the sound of voices. So what we did is we brought people into our lab and we had them do a vocal first impression. So a vocal first impression is the first word that someone says. And it's actually where research has found that we decide how confident someone is within 100 milliseconds of hearing them speak. That's hello. That's it. Why? Why does this work this way? Is because our vocal cords are very sensitive to tension. So if I'm relaxed, I'm using my maximum resonance point. I'm really down low, my vocal cords are nice and relaxed. Now, I'm gonna tighten my voice so you can hear what it sounds like. So if I begin to get anxious or afraid, my vocal cords tighten like this and I'll go a little higher in my vocal range. I'll also begin to get a lot of vocal fry so that I lose my actual voice, but you can just hear that vocal fry. And that's because I'm tightening my vocal cords very tightly. And so we listen for this. So if I were to say hello, hello?
Oh, you sound so like I'm getting anxious for you.
Versus hello?
Yeah.
right? Like that's me. You can tell it's me. So listen to the difference. Hello? Hello? Like still me, but totally different perceptions of confidence, right? So your first word in your date, on your Zoom call, in your meeting is actually the most important thing you can do for your confidence. And you want to make sure you're not accidentally giving away your vocal confidence. So we brought people in the lab and we had them do hellos. That's all we had them do, okay? So they went and they sat in the microphone and they said, hello, just like they answered the phone. Yeah. We had them do 2 control hellos, so they're normal hellos. And then we had them do a happiness microexpression and think of something that made them happy. So we had them think of something that makes you happy, right? And you smile, 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 and then say hello.
Hello.
Okay, right? So we had them do their hello, their happiness hello. Then we had them think of something that makes them angry. Angry, angry, angry. Now, pull your eyebrows down, harden your lower lips, and say hello.
Hello.
Right. Then and by the way, these sound very distinct, but in the lab, we said to them, make your hello kind of sound the same. Don't try to make it sound different.
Right.
Like try to hide it. We just want you to think and feel it. So we had them do a anger microexpression, a happiness microexpression, a neutral expression, a fear expression, hello, and a sadness expression. So a sadness expression is when we pull our corners of our lips down and we droop our lower lids and we say hello. Right. Aww. Now, they were not that dramatic. Right? We had them try to hide it. But what we found is that, one, those hellos sounded distinctly different even when they were trying to hide the emotion, which is exactly what happens when you pick up the phone in a bad mood, right? You're like, I'm in a really bad mood, but I'm going to try to hide it. Hello? Right?
Yeah.
Right. This is like me with phone anxiety is I'm like, please don't pick up, please don't pick up, please don't pick up. Hey, how are you?
Yeah.
Right. Like we can still hear it. So they sounded different. Same person, but like there was differences. You couldn't know what you were hearing, but you could hear they sounded a little bit different. Then we took all those recordings and we had people on our website listen to the hello and answer, I like this person a lot. I like this person a little. I don't like this person at all. Right? So they didn't know what they were hearing, right? It was just a random male or female saying hello. And we had them answer these questions. We found there was the most likable hello and the least likable hello. Can you guess which or what?
The most likable was the happy and the least likable was the, I'm gonna go with angry.
So the most likable hello was happy, but a close second was the last control hello. In other words, once someone was warmed and had gone through the exercise with us and felt really comfortable, their last comfortable hello got really so close to the top.
Wow.
Which means like if you're warmed up and you're kind of comfortable, you also sound very charismatic and confident. The least likable hello was the sadness hello. We do not like to catch sadness. Anger, we can calm down. Fear, we can calm down. We don't like sad people.
Interesting.
Yeah.
And so when you see movies where people are practicing in front of the mirror, that's actually a good thing.
Yeah. Like you can work out your nerves. Right? Like you can rehearse out your nerves. Like we give at our website social meditations, like just like for how people like to like meditate like with an active exercise before they socialize. Like that really does work. Okay, so what's interesting about this is like your face, your expressions can change your sound. So before you answer the phone, before you walk into the room, before you say hello, try not to hold your breath. So another thing that can happen is people go, hello, hi. In fact, when I watch some of your interviews, I notice that someone sounds different in the first line versus their most confident answers. It's so funny. Like some of your guests, I'll notice like right at the beginning, they're like, hi, Lisa. Hello. It's so good to see you. And then once they get to their content, they're like killing it. They're like, you know, telling like it is. I probably did it today just because I was excited to see you because excitement and highness go hand in hand.
Oh.
Right? Like when we're excited, we often go like really high. We're so excited to see each other. So you have to be really careful to not go too high in the very beginning. So don't hold your breath, right? When you're saying, hey, everyone, that sounds more nervous versus, hey, everyone, like totally different. So make sure you're speaking on the out breath. Try not to hold your breath. And if you can, think of why you're comfortable, confident, happy. That's very contagious.
I love this because when I think about all the things that hold us back, like these moments when we first go, like the first date, that first job interview, that first moment of like, it can be nerve-wracking. And sometimes when you don't know why you've either been rejected or why something's been a no, not being able to self-assess, it leaves you like without being able to maneuver again, whether it's a date or anything. And so at least having these tactics and tools, like know how I sound now, and I've just embraced it. But I know that I'm squeaky, and I know that when I first say hi to people, I'm like, "Hey, what's up, homie?" Like,
you think you're squeaky?
I do. I think I'm so squeaky.
It's because when we get excited, we want to be high. Like babies prefer higher voices.
Oh,
like
yeah.
when we're trying to be like excitable. It's funny because we just identify. You feel that you're squeaky. Tom also told me that he feels that he has a dangerous face, and so
it's a neutral. Oh, what is it? An angry neutral face.
Yes, he feels he has an angry neutral face, and he does. And the reason is because of his brows.
Yeah.
I don't know if I told him that, but it's because he has a very strong low brow line. That is why. It's not nothing he can control. It's just when we have, like, for example, I'll do it on my face, but like if I were to be like this, I would look angrier all the time. He has a very like low brow line, so actually he can't even help it. And so what I would say to you both is like, do you have to? Do you have to? Like, you're squeaky, you embrace it. I love it.
Oh, yeah. I
like,
just gone, this is
he's
how
good
I
too.
am.
And so I think that's also very important to talk about for a second is like, okay, like let's say that you have a negative cue. You know, if that's just you, right? Like sometimes people have resting bitch face, right? I do. And there are times when I'm like, I don't want it, right? I want to make someone feel really comfortable and I want to be like, you know, looking happier. But there are times where I'm also like, I'm good with how I look. Like my team knows how I look. Like on our team calls, like I don't pretend that I don't have resting bitch face. They know I have it and I'm fine. I actually call it resting bothered face because I look bothered. I'm actually not, but it's just my resting face. So there's also an aspect of this is like, yes, you can optimize every cue that you show, but I also want you to feel like you. You know, I also want you to show up and feel like you're not faking it till you make it. And so there's a very fine line between I want to optimize my cues, I want to connect with people, I want to show up as my most confident, charismatic self, but I also want you to feel like you. And so, yeah, okay, you're squeaky sometimes. Cool. That's part of your brand, right?
Yeah.
Like I have a resting bothered face. Okay, like it's gonna make me look
It
more
is what
serious,
it is, yeah.
Right? So I don't want people to feel like they have to fake it or be something they're not.
Can you explain to me why you hate the fake it till you make it?
Oh, yeah. I don't like fake it till you make it. I'm against it. And the reason for that is because we can sniff out fake. It is really hard to pretend to be happy when you're not.
And you actually mean you can sniff out fake?
Yeah, you can sniff out fake. And so there's a study I talk about in my TED Talk a little bit, which is a skydiving study where they had people come into their lab, split up into two different groups. And one group, they wore sweat pads so they could catch their sweat, kind of gross, and run on the treadmill. The other group also wore sweat pads and then skydived for the first time. They had two sweat pads, treadmill sweat pads and skydiving sweat pads. In other words, regular sweat and fear sweat. They put people into an MRI and they had them smell the sweat pads. And they had no idea what they were smelling, by the way, like horrible. I hope they paid those people a lot of money to go on that experiment, right? So imagine like they found that when people smelled the fear sweat, they caught the fear. So when people smelled the fear sweat, they had no idea what they were smelling. Their amygdala began to fire. So if fake it till you make it doesn't work, because if you're afraid and then you pretend to be happy by like putting on a happy face, people can smell, catch, feel that fear. And then they're like inauthentic. You're like, something feels off. You're like, you're smiling at me, but I feel nervous. Like something isn't right. Like I'm catching your fear. So that's why there's certain people, you don't know why you don't quite like them, but like they give you like a spidey sense of like they're draining or you don't like them. It's because they're probably faking it. That's why I'm like, I love all these cues and I want you to try them on. And I want you to pick the ones that feel natural to you, but I don't want you to fake being happy if you're not. I would rather, if you're in a bad mood, don't answer the phone. Or if you're in a bad mood, cancel the date. Right? Like, and like be honest about it. I'm so sorry. I've had a really shitty day. I can't come to the date because I want to be my best self for you. Can we please reschedule for next weekend? Or like, I would much rather you be authentic and real and assertive. And I do believe you can be assertive and nice. I think assertive people are aggressively kind. Aggressively kind means you're saying what you need. You're showing up so you can be your real self. And that means not showing up sometimes. And that means canceling last minute sometimes. And that means saying, I'm so sorry, I've had a really bad day. Can you help cheer me up? Like that's what aggressively kind, assertively nice people do.
Dude, the pheromone thing is insane.
Yeah, it's insane.
Like
It like has so many implications, it's hard to even
so
comprehend.
many. I mean, it kind of really allows us to come full circle from where we even started, where it comes to gut instinct and intuition. Like these are the things that you may not even be able to actually explain. And maybe a scientist can when they go deep into pheromones and why. And I actually understand, going back to the caveman days, why that would serve you, right? Because you don't have time to scream to somebody or to tell somebody, you just sense it. And then so thinking through the fear thing and then how that can show up like on certain days, if one of you that is anxious, like then almost like I feel kind of bad for the other person, because it's like, or feel for the person that's anxious, because now maybe you're putting them off you and they don't even know why. And it's maybe the pheromones of your fear.
You just put your finger on why social anxiety happens. It's a terrible loop. So for those of you who experience social anxiety, my heart goes out to you, because it is such a struggle, because you're stuck in a cycle. And here's the cycle. I call myself a recovering awkward person because I was in the cycle for many years before I was able to break out of it. You're anxious. You're like, I gotta go on this date, or I gotta go to this event. So you push yourself to go. You fake it till you make it. But you're anxious. So everyone around you catches the anxiety. And they're also like, I don't really want to go out with this person again. I don't want to invite them again. I don't want to talk to them. Which makes you feel like, why did I even come to this event? Everyone doesn't like me. Which makes you even more socially anxious. Then you try it again. And then you're more socially anxious. And you're stuck in this loop of, I'm trying to make connections, but I'm anxious. And then you're making these connections, but you're not making the connections because you're so anxious. That is the cycle of social anxiety. It can be broken. You just have to figure out how you can be your true self while not triggering your anxiety.
So there was a stat that you said that I found so fascinating. It was something like telemarketers, if they had a photo of a successful athlete at the top of the script, they were better off in their job. And so now, as we're talking about this and about getting anxious, would you advise to put a picture of somebody that you so admire and stare at it before you go on a date? And if you don't actually mind breaking that down, the study and everything.
I don't remember the exact numbers, but it's exactly as you described, is that they had telemarketers. Some people looked at pictures of like pretty meadows, and some people looked at pictures of an athlete winning a race. Specifically, it was an athlete in pride pose. So as humans across cultures, when we win a race, we want to take up as much space as possible. We tilt our chin up, right? We open up our jugular. We usually open up our hands. We usually gesture up towards the sky, or we kind of make a big gesture. That's a universal gesture of pride. Like when kids win a race, they jump up and down. It's because we're saying, I'm comfortable in my environment and I want to be noticed. Right? It's like a universal expression of pride. So they had people in a universal expression of pride. What's interesting is they've studied this in a lot of different ways, in that, yes, fear is contagious, but pride is contagious too, right? This is why charismatic people, we're so drawn to them. It's because we want to catch their charisma, right? We're attracted to that person across the room who's very charismatic, who's signaling all the cues that we like. So I outline the charisma cues. So openness, fronting, leaning, nodding, mirroring, touch, right? There's all these cues that we're like we like it because we want to catch it. It's not only because we like that person, we want it for ourselves. So what they found is if they flash this picture, or they have this picture of a pride athlete, it sort of like triggered the winner's response and the pride response in the telemarketers, which when we catch pride, it makes us better. Like a micro win, a small win, it triggers a chemical response in our body, not to get overcomplicated, but it gives us testosterone, which even if we're a woman, that makes us run faster, it makes us think faster, it increases our endurance. And so if we win, or we see someone win, we feel like a winner, which makes us think more like a winner. And so like it creates this like virtuous cycle. And then you have one good call as a telemarketer and you're like, I got this. So part of that combating social anxiety, the way that I try to combat it and I teach people, is using micro wins. Very small wins that can build up to, oh, I'm breaking out of this anxiety pattern. And thinking about a role model is a good way to do it. So one, you can have, sure, pictures of people in pride, but more so, I'd rather you have like a success file, which is like things that you have done in the past that make you feel really good. That could be a great email or a picture of you or a great friendship. Like I call it a success file. Like it's things that like really made you feel successful. So you're using your own past success to trigger your current success. Second, you absolutely can use a role model. Like another way they've studied this is they asked students who were giving presentations to present like Steve Jobs. Steve Jobs is sort of known as being a very good presenter. And what they found is the moment they told students to pretend to be Steve Jobs or envision Steve Jobs, it changed everything about their cues. They used better hand gestures. They spoke for longer. Their presentations were on average longer, and they felt better on stage. So you can also kind of channel
Beyonce.
channel Steve Jobs, channel whoever it is you think. And this, like, that's why I watch a lot of TED Talks, is I feel very inspired by whoever is invited to be on a TED stage is an expert in their field. And so like, I feel that that's like a great way. So like, watch TED Talks, watch inspiring speakers, listen to podcasts or shows like this that are like very inspiring, that makes you feel like, yeah, like I got this. Like, I think that you and I are in our comfort zone right now. Like, I love talking about this stuff. That's contagious. There's a reason why we like listening to podcasts. It's because we're like, ooh, this person's talking about their juice, their good stuff. We want to feel that way too. So like, we can put all those things around us to help us, feel more motivated.
Yeah, when I heard you say that stat and stuff, I was like, because I'm always trying to think, how do I use this to my advantage, right? How do I implement this into my life so that I can overcome whatever issue I'm facing?
Yeah.
And so really finding that place where people can, and it didn't really dawn on me on the athlete thing in the pose. That was interesting.
Yes.
And footballers, soccer players being British, this is exactly what they do when they score, right? It's this.
Yeah. Always.
But it's like,
or,
it feels like the champion's position.
Yes, they studied congenitally blind athletes who've been blind since birth. They've never seen anyone win a race. Congenitally blind athletes make the same body language poses when they win and when they lose as seeing athletes. When you lose, they do the opposite. They crumple to the ground. They take up as little space as possible. They tilt their chin down. They usually make a pained expression on their face. They often clench their fists. Even though they've never seen that happen before, instinctively their bodies know to do that.
That's insane. I mean,
By the way, let's extrapolate that a little further. Pride, big, taking up space, great. But defeat, what did I do? I tilted my head down. I put my arms to my side, and I put my fists and hands together. When I check my phone, I also do this. When we check our phone, we accidentally go into the defeat posture.
Ooh.
So if you're waiting for your date to show up and you're sitting at the table like this, you are triggering in your body a feeling of defeat and shame. And your first impression when they walk into the restaurant is to see you hunched over your phone. Immediately, you're sending a defeated position. That is immediately saying, speed reading wise, I feel defeated, I feel ashamed, but by accident. By accident, we're doing that. We're checking our phone. We don't even realize it. So if you are waiting for your date, please look around the room, take stock, take up space, put your arm on the chair, look around, chat with the waiter, practice your banter, right? Like, I love practicing my banter with servers, right? Because that's a great way to like kind of warm yourself up, look around, take stock, open the menu, right? Like, look at it really big. Try to take up space as opposed to checking your phone. You also don't know what you're going to see on your phone, and it might trigger that sense of anxiety in your feed. Do not do that in your first impression, right? You want your first impression to be as expansive as possible. When they walk in, you can't go like this, right? Or you can say, oh, it's so good to see you if you want to. But I'd rather, oh my gosh, good to see you. Hey, come on over. Right? Like, even that is a huge, very easy, broad gesture.
And you did that, so that's showing your wrist.
Yeah. And also, like, it's broad, right? I was like, hey, good to see you.
Yeah. Dude, that's fascinating. So you mentioned charisma a couple of times now.
Yes.
Explain to me the difference though between someone that is charismatic and someone that is a narcissist, because that is one of the traits that we've heard that narcissists have.
Okay, so let's talk about why this happens. A narcissist is someone who believes in themselves so much that they don't take other people's feelings into account. They have so much confidence, they feel they're better than everyone else. Narcissism breeds confidence. They also feel so confident and so good that is also contagious. It's one of the reasons why sometimes we are attracted to narcissists, right? We don't like that they lie to us, but boy, are they really confidently contagious. That is why you'll have people who are like, oh, I just keep dating the same person over and over again. They're so narcissistic, they're so obsessed with themselves. You don't have to be hard on yourself for that. The reason is because you're attracted to their innate sense of confidence because you want to catch it, right? And so narcissism breeds confidence, which can breed charisma because they feel so good about themselves, they're not faking anything. Right? They really feel like they're the best catch in the world. So it's actually a sequence of events that happens. And once you recognize that, it's much easier to spot it. You can say, oh, there's a really confident person. I can find my own confidence. Right? I don't need to get it from someone else. I can buy radical confidence. I can go figure out my cues. I don't need to get it from you. I can get it myself. That's a much more empowering way to say, I can recognize that's a confident person, but I don't need to get it from them.
All right, so let's say you've done that, but you still love being around charismatic people.
Absolutely.
How do you know when it goes from charismatic to narcissism?
When you feel like you're being gaslit. So gaslighting, I don't know if you've talked about this much, but if you feel like you're not, like you're questioning yourself all the time, or they're making you question your own truth, that is a problem. That is when narcissism has gone into you questioning your own truth, right? You have to know your own truth. So when you feel like you're being gaslit, when you are feeling like you are constantly sacrificing your happiness and your time for someone who's not appreciating it, right? That is when like, okay, gone a step too far. And I also think when a relationship burns you out, you know, like relationships most of the time should give you energy. Now, when someone's having a bad week or a bad day or going through a crisis, no, then you're the giver of energy. But for the most part, a good relationship gives both people energy. Both people are like, oh, I'm so excited to see them. I'm so excited to spend time with them. I love talking to them. We're going to make time for each other. That's energy giving. In a narcissistic relationship, it has gone too far when the narcissist is taking, and they're getting energy, but you're not. Or their energy is coming at the sake of your energy. That's when it's too much. A narcissist is fun to be in a relationship with at first because A, you catch their confidence, right? You catch their cues. They make you feel so good. It's fun to be around them. And that gives you energy, right? Then it's both people get energy. But over time, they begin to take more than they give. That contagiousness kind of wears off because they're taking from you so much. They're pushing your boundaries. They're putting you down. They're making you doubt your own self-truth. And that's when you know, okay, I am giving way more than I'm taking. They're taking more than I'm willing to give.
If you want to learn the high price every woman pays for committing to the wrong person, then click here right now.
So many of us may go on a date and we're like, oh my God, this is the one. And you really think that they tick all the boxes, but then a year down the line,